especially for the GTEs. Taking those tires, it's basically the same sort of regulations they have on the real life side of things, where you cannot take fuel and tires at the same time, and that's modeled here in iRacing as well. And you can just see that that other GTE machine, I can't quite see who that is here at the moment, but they're just currently using the Williams Esports Razor car as a bit of a drafting partner at the moment. They're lifting out massively coming down these straights to just hit their fuel numbers. So they're really loving this car that's a lap or so ahead of them, being placed right on the front of their nose at the moment. Just gives them an opportunity to make things a little bit better on the strategy for them.
Yeah, but we have to consider also that they are actually right behind the little Razor cars. So had they been, you know, a lap ahead, so 30 laps behind the leader, they would have been in the same lap, and that actually would have been a battle for position, Connery. So it's a very interesting scenario, you know. Oh yeah. You want to overtake the guy ahead of you and try to, you know, go for more positions and be within the same level as the guy of the rest of your field. Well, the field would be the guy ahead of you only, because the rest is actually 29 laps, 2 laps ahead of you. Or you want to hang back, just drive your own race, because for the number 12, you're just driving your own race, and they're just trying to complete the race for now. They're also driving, you know, for Martin Solari. All the 3 cars actually have the emblem of Martin Solari on their vehicles. Sim Racing for Martin, so they're trying to do the honorable job, trying to complete the race despite winning.
As you quite rightfully mentioned, you know, both these cars up on screen for you now are basically exactly a lap apart, even though they're just 1 position apart here. So that's just the situation that's going on there with the Williams Esports Razor and the Biela Racing Team Euronics car. They currently have your Daytona, one of your Kwanzaa Daytona prototypes behind them. That's actually that's the number 88 VRS Grand Sim Sport Daytona prototype coming onto the lane now. They haven't really had the greatest time of things. Keegan Leahy brings that car down in, and going to be taking tires on this stop as well. Currently though, this battle in your GTE class, it's starting to get a little bit closer. This time it's going to be between the Williams Gym Esports Solari car and the AAA Esports Black car. Of course, there's a little bit of a difference in the strategy here, as AAA Esports, they came down on towards the lane just 6 laps ago. Meanwhile, Williams Gym, they are about 21 laps on their stint at the moment. So a big advantage going the way of the AAA Esports car right now, and they've been able to reel that gap all the way in. And maybe we'll just get a little bit of action here out on circuit, if we're lucky, before Williams Gym Esports decide to pit.
Yeah, well, as I'm seeing over here, Ricardo Perez just not being able to catch the toe of the DP that actually overtook him. That was the Drive X Esports, the P4 in the DP and overall class. And right now the gap is nearly over a second. It's just slightly 0.9 seconds between the Williams Gym Esports with Canapino and the 211 of Ferreira. So the problem now for Ferreira, he hasn't put new tires in. So I haven't seen if he actually put tires when he took over the car, and if he did, that might be a triple stint. And if it is a triple stint, that might be risky, because he might not get the performance which he want to get, despite now losing a lot of road.
Car right.
Yeah, 1.5 seconds at the start-finish line between the two of them, so that gap just extends just that little bit more, fluctuates in and out, but the overall story for AAA Esports not able to get into that slipstream just yet. But with the slightly fresher tires, they didn't take tires on that last stop, but with the slightly fresher tires here, they might just be able to work their way back in, especially coming through this infield section where you can make up a lot of the time on the slightly newer tires. And you can see a gap about 1.6 seconds as they head their way through the latter portion of the infield there. So Ricardo Ferreira still has a decent amount of work to do, but still plenty of time to do it in, you have to argue, here with 5 hours and 20 minutes left remaining of this race. Just to check in with a couple of your GT3 machines here, because we currently have cars that are close in that class as well, but most of this is down to differences on the strategy as well. So the same sort of case in your GT3s. So you do have PRT GT3 and the Simsa Esports GT3 cars. Around about 2 seconds between the two of them right now. But that is mostly because that Pure Racing Team GT3 car did come in around about 4 laps ago for a pit stop service. So no tyres for them on that stop. Meanwhile, fresher tyres on that Simsa car. But again, they're about a good couple of laps away from coming down in for their next pit stop service. So this one looks like it'll be short-lived as well. So, you know, this is basically sort of setting the stage right now for those final few hours, Lorenzo, here with the strategies. We'll not know really where everyone is in terms of an actual gap out there on circuit until inside that final hour where everyone gets their final pit stops done.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the pit lane, not the pit lane, but the pit stint, the lap stint, sorry, of those cars. Well, Pure just pitted 4 laps ago. They're on the 5th lap of their stint so far. Jensen, if they continue going like this, they might have to take an extra pit stop just to splash and go with around 40 to 45 minutes to go in this session, unless they go for a short pit stop. And then you need a full pit, full service coming to the final hour. But Simsa is on their 20th lap stint so far. They might pit around the hour, so they shouldn't be too concerned in terms of, you know, fuel saving or anything of the sort when they come down in pit lane. So, in my opinion, in terms of strategy games, with a little bit more advantage compared to Pure, even though Pure has, you know, those top drivers in GT.
Since it is a RaceSpot TV tradition when it comes to these 24-hour races, you know, usually it's breakfast with Will, but Will isn't here, so it has to be breakfast with Connery and Lorenzo at the moment, where we describe what we had for breakfast. Lorenzo, you go first. Well, I guess I haven't had breakfast yet because Brazil and whatever. Yeah, but what will you have for breakfast then?
A good nap.
I'm pretty sure naps aren't edible.
I don't know if this is edible, but if I have actually to have a breakfast, I'd probably go for a smoothie. I would make a smoothie first and foremost with some vitamins, and try to eat a bread and make a toast. What do you think?
You know what, I was thinking of treating myself this morning and actually going for the typical student option of having what is basically a dinner in the morning. But I ended up deciding against it because I had to set up for this broadcast. So I just had some very plain, very simple. You can't go wrong with just some simple ham sandwiches, right?
It's fair, but no. I had something on my mind, but I'm not going to use what David put over here in our team speak about sandwiches. Sorry, guys, I'm not David, okay? I don't go deeply into the sandwich talk. I might go deeply into pizza talk, but no sandwich talk. That is not my zone. You take it away, Connor.
I'm actually curious now because I'm just trying to scroll back through our little bit of a chat here to see exactly what was said. But
I'll stage over here.
Okay. I'll be paying attention to that. But
there you go.
For those Europeans in the chat, both in the YouTube chat and of course, I believe we're live on Facebook as well, and of course on Twitch. What do you guys have for breakfast if you're a European, I suppose? Because if you're anywhere else in the world, having breakfast around this time would probably be a bit weird, especially if you're from North America, being around about 1 a.m. in the morning or something like that. But right now, I'm just curious to know what you guys are doing here this morning. And right now, these drivers, well, look at their breakfast. They're going to have to wait, at least for those drivers out there on circuit. And the team members are able to get themselves a bit of a break. Team RSO, that's a big spin coming through the first turn. That is your P8 Daytona prototype. Manuel Sudau behind the wheel of that. We just caught that right at the very, very back of our shot here. We can get another look at it. Down in towards turn number 1. And this is exactly what I was talking about, Lorenzo. Turn 1 is just so tricky here at Daytona. We'll get a view from up above of Manuel Sudau's moment here. Luckily, no one else was collected in this. And of course, he didn't have contact with anything. So he can get that car spun back around with no damage. But again, scary moment here for RSO.
Yeah, and remember when we talked about, you know, the car coming off the banking and you're quite fast, and the car offsets a little bit into that into turn 1. I think for the Daytona prototypes it's more complicated because you don't have the ABS like you probably would have in the GT3s. Well, GTEs doesn't have it, but they have some high performance brake. I don't believe you get that kind of level of braking on the Daytona prototypes, but you can see he just comes way too hard into turn number 1. He tried to carry as much speed he can possibly carry on the outside part of the turn 1, trying to maximize a kind of a late apex, a wide late apex, but just couldn't carry that speed and offset the car quite heavily. Luckily, he went to the outside on the inside part of the track.
Yeah, so a little bit of a moment there for Team RSO. They were around about a minute behind the Suzuki BMX Racing Daytona prototype for P7, and they have a quite comfortable buffer over the VRS kind of SimSport number 18 car, so it's not going to matter that much in the grand scheme of things, but you know, those sorts of errors really do add up over the course of a 24-hour event. Even if you do it a couple of times, that's going to be, what, 20, 30, 40 seconds lost, and that could be all the difference coming towards the checkered flag.
Yeah, and especially with the new penalty system that we have, right, Connery, right now, this new penalty system, if you guys are not aware, it is 100 points. You have 100 incident points that you can waste. And in Daytona, the only places I can actually see you wasting is A, you get in contact with another car. B, you spin right at the oval section as the Team RSO this way. It is possible. I've done it at least 300,000 times. B, C, you go into the outside part of the bus stop, at the exit of the bus stop. And then at turn 1, if you spin the car. So, depending on how your race goes, it's easy to get those 100. It isn't like Spa, but it is possible, trust me. And after that, you get 20 every 20 point incident, you get a drive through, and that will take a toll on your safety rating if you keep getting those penalties.
Someone in the Twitch chat said, "Is a hot dog a sandwich?" And at first I thought no, but I'm finding it hard to justify that because it's something in between two pieces of bread, and that's what a sandwich is, right?
All right. Remember when I sent you that chart? I sent you the chart. The chart basically says for ingredient purists, it isn't a sandwich, but in a whole perspective, it is something put inside another thing. I'm ready. Sorry.
I think we're overcomplicating things here.
Yeah, we're overcomplicating things. I'm just gonna say, in one word, yes.
Thing is, it goes against everything I feel with my initial reaction, but I gotta say, a hot dog technically is a sandwich, even though I disagree with it. It's something between two pieces of bread, and that's the definition I'm going to use. I'm not sure what your thoughts there are, Lorenzo.
I'll agree with you. That's what I wanted to say.
Well,
I just can't put it in better words at this time of the day.
Well, someone just said hot dog one's one piece of bread, it cut in half on one side, so it's not a sandwich. Which I can see that, but
There is a reasonable explanation. I got also people saying here that hot dog is a hot dog.
Okay, we're about a couple of hours. Well, not even a couple of hours. We're almost an hour into the segment, and food talk has already started. So there we go. That's just breakfast here in the mornings here on RaceSpot TV, on the iRacing Esports Network. It seems like people do disagree with our assessment, but you know, you can see why. Just that one cut in the bread instead of the clean all the way through between two pieces. But right now. Simon Feigl says, well, watch Sausage Party if you want to know the answer, yeah. Maybe a little bit too risky for a stream such as this, as Team RSO, they are coming down on towards the lane right now. After having that little bit of a spin, they decided to bring it down in and get their next pit stop service done. They are joined by another Daytona prototype as well, just getting themselves stopped in their box. So that's the situation for Team RSO at the moment. Go on.
I was going to say, that's Radicals joining them.
Oh, yeah, Radicals in line. Yeah, they are also down on towards the lane. They're currently P number 11 there, so Sven Kammert deciding to take tires once again. You can see the Team RSO car coming off of the pit lane, and Kammert will soon follow. There we go, almost the exact same time as the AMG Mercedes GT3 car directly ahead of them. So, you know, it's basically at this point in the race, you have pit stops happening almost constantly. There's no really sort of quote-unquote pit stop window, so to speak. You know, at the first couple of hours of the race, you say, yeah, the DPs probably come in around about 40, 45, 50 minutes into the race, and of course the GTEs and the GT3s deciding to make the hour mark, so you know exactly when to expect pit stops. But now with the spreading out of the strategy in all three classes, we'll be seeing a lot of cars make a couple of trips towards the pit lane at seemingly odd times, but it makes sense to them.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of like NASCAR under the green flag of sorts, you know. Cars coming into very different times. We try to, you know, establish their strategies, try to do good service or not, driver swaps or whatever. I think the only time we might see something more aligned won't be like a car train, like a 5-car train, 3-car train, whatever car train coming into the pit lane, but it might become more synchronized at the final 2 hours, where the strategies, I think, might converge, and you are, you know, trying to gun for something more than you already are in right now. So for now, this spreading out of here, guys, be spread out to the different kinds of this.
People wondering where all the on-track action is. Well, we would show it if there was on-track action. Currently, the closest battle that we have on circuit is between iRacing DP and the DriveX Esports car. Around about 2 seconds between the two of them at the moment. But as you can see, that DriveX Esports car has lost a big chunk of time on that last lap, 7.5 seconds to be exact, and that's, you know, a return to form of what they did on the laps previous as well, with the losing time department. So not being a great couple of laps in terms of their quest to try and get up to iRacing right now. But still a very long time in this race just yet, so plenty of opportunities for them to be able to work their way by. In fact, they've actually gained a decent amount just over the last couple of months. We'll bring up that graphic again, because now it's down to 1.6 seconds. So iRacing is having a little bit of trouble on this lap, shall we say. We'll get to have a look at them. There's Justin Brunner heading his way through the bus stop at the moment, and he hasn't had a great lap, has he?
Had the greatest of laps. As I'm seeing over here for now, Justin's last laps around 139, 137, 137, 138. Well, 138 and 137 mids. It's completely normal for you to do that, because it is the normal laps that the Daytona prototype will do at this time of day and given the traffic that you are facing. But 139 is something that you really don't want to face. If you have a driver that just came out of the pit lane, 2 laps in, does have new rubber, and is gunning down on you hard, you really don't want to lose a lot of time when you come down to the pit lane in about 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, that looks to be the objective here. iRacing, AMG Mercedes ahead of them right now, coming through the kink. Not the most ideal point in the track to be getting stuck behind traffic. They will go for the dive down the inside through the right, and a lot of room given there by that Mercedes, which is what you'd like to see, especially since we are still a decent amount of time before the end here. A lot of the GT3s especially giving a lot of space to those cars trying to work their way through, and that's the sort of more, in a way, race strategy sort of defensive driving there on the part of the GT3 machines. There's no point in squeezing a Daytona prototype or making life hard for them, especially at this point in the race. Maybe when it gets a little bit later on with a couple of hours to go, you'll see the GT3s or GTEs be a little bit more demanding of the DPs while they're trying to work their way through, because they have their own battles to be concerned about. But at this point in the race, there's really no point in making life difficult.
Yeah, unless you're, I'm going to actually bring it up, I don't know if you saw it, unless you're actually Max Benecke, when you're trying to fight for position, and you don't, and you basically go against a DP, you basically take him out of the way. You just give like flashlights. I'm coming through, and he dive bombs the Daytona prototype. If it was a GT3 car, though, I would totally understand. But a Daytona prototype, and you're trying to fight for position, I've never seen that before. If this was like GT's dive bomb, it's kind of like GT's dive bombing LMP ones in ILS.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you see it with the braking performance of the GT3s and GTEs coming down into, especially the heavy braking zones. They can get themselves stopped a lot more efficiently than some of the Daytona prototypes. They have ABS, whereas the DPs they're just going to have to struggle with none, I believe. So it's you know, it's particularly tricky sometimes when you have a sort of group of cars all in mixed classes coming down into a heavy braking zone. Some of these Daytona prototypes are not expecting the GTEs or the GT3s to be so good on the brakes, and it sometimes takes them by surprise. And Beneke really did show how good the brakes are on these GT cars.
Yeah, and especially in a section where it can get heavily convoluted, which is the horseshoe, international horseshoe. If you guys don't know what the international horseshoe is, if you are not familiar with the Daytona, that is turn 3. That is just after turn 1, you know, the dead ass, which is basically a turn, right and left turn, and then you come into the right-hand hairpin, which is a very slow hairpin, but again, it can get convoluted. You really want to maximize the power out of the car on the exit. And I'm gonna be in real quick. I'll give props to Justin. He's handling track right now so well because Sergio Ignacio, 4 laps into his stint, and he's not being able to close that gap on that NX car.
He's been able to close it a bit. 6.5 tenths of a second on that last lap, and they're dealing with quite heavy traffic at the moment, and Inex also dealing with traffic of their own class as well, so that's not exactly ideal for them. But look at this gaggle of cars heading their way through the infield section right now. A bit of a train, but nothing that these Daytona prototype drivers aren't used to trying to work through, especially coming through the first couple of stints of a race where all the GT cars are all in one big train. And it takes quite a specified skill set to be able to work your way through on big trains like that, just to scythe your way through, looking for the opportunities without losing too much time, and more importantly, not putting the other cars under threat. And you know, when we're about 5 hours before the end here, there's still potential for sort of those long trains to develop. It's just the natural order of things in these endurance races, so you still have to use those skills at this point in the race as well to try and deal with traffic, as SuperCube NX hitting their way through the bus stop right now. And look at that, there's the DriveX esports car, so they are really motoring right now on those fresher tires. They're now 7 tenths of a second behind the SuperCube NX Racing Daytona prototype car, but NX are sort of due for a pit stop at this point, but it looks like we will get that sought after on-track action, unless NX decides to basically bait us and head down into the pit lane this time.
Yeah, because right now, so you saw, look at Sergio Ignacio's braking, like late brake, basically maximum usage of the apex into turn 1. This shreds away the gap to Brunner himself. And the problem for Brunner is that he had a DP car ahead of him. I think that is the CTC Race Black. I could be totally incorrect about it. That it kind of blocked this path when he came into the turn 1 international horseshoe, allowing, there he goes once again, now SUVs on the way, and the traffic going down Ignacio's hand right now, just playing in his fashion, and now he's going to have the entire back session to close down and then work to the bus stop for a possible overtake.
You can see a shot from the spotter's stand, of course, in the Daytona 500 here. This is where the well, at least a couple of the crew members from each team will be standing to try and give advice and positional advice to the drivers in the NASCAR races. But we've set a camera up here in the virtual side of things, so we can get a good view around all the banked parts of the racetrack. Having to go around the outside of the AMG Mercedes GT3 there, as DriveX Esports continue to close in on the run down towards the bus stop now. And there we go. What I suggested might happen has happened. DriveX InX Racing are down on towards the pit lane this time. We won't get to see an overtake for position just yet here. We'll have to wait a little bit longer, Renzo.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer, but still, good stint of NX to go over, you know, over in front of DriveX going into the pit lane. You know, you might be thinking, oh, we just lost a little bit of time and all that kind of stuff. We're on different strategies, but if you think about the long run, you know, when you're coming down to the final hour and a half, 2 hours, and you might have to, you know, make some different pit stops to try to get your position ahead, try to go for an undercut. That is outstanding. Not only you had a guy that had more grip and rubber than your car, even though he was heavier, but also had more pace than you. So props to Brunner. They had their few moments in this race, but InX, I think, of the GDP field, is the biggest gainer of the field.
Just saw MSI Esports look for a move over that Mercedes GT3 car into the bus stop, but wasn't able to find a comfortable enough gap and just slid back in line. And that's a good call there for that MSI Esports car. Yes, does lose him a little bit of time, but doesn't make it. He refused to make it a sort of sketchy situation into the braking zone and decided, okay, I'll take this lost time in the chin. I'm going to file in behind and get that done in a more obvious place coming off of the, coming into the acceleration zone of the bus stop chicane. So it's a good call there for Alejandro Sanchez, currently behind the wheel of MSI Esports, as he tries to chase down Williams Jim Esports Solari right now. As Jim, they've come down towards the lane around about 2 laps ago, and it was for a full service as well. So they took tires. Here did Alex Arana and his team, so they should be able to pull away at this point from MSI Esports, who are on the older tires. But we'll just have to see exactly how this one works out, because, you know, traffic can very much influence things like this.
And it already did, because the gap already raced to 2.3 seconds between Arana and the MSI from Alejandro Sanchez. And it's funny that Arana, given the circumstances where Arana was in the earlier stages of the race, getting into so many fisticuffs with some of the other teams, and still keep the car on track. You might look at it this way: oh, that black car has gotten a few fights and has seen its time before, but it looks in one piece relatively, right? I like it. You know, you're still keeping the car on track, you're still being competitive, and if I'm not mistaken, they are tied with CRC Titans in terms of biggest GP.
Yeah, so, you know, it's been a decent day from them. Of course, qualifying in a race like this, not that important. Yeah, it's good to get the track position early on in the race so you don't lose time inside those first couple of hours trying to make up for a bad qualifying. But, you know, 24-hour race, plenty of time to get things done. As you see that MSI Esports car work its way through towards that infield section at the moment. Let's just have a check-in with your overall race leader. And look at that train of cars ahead of them. Oh, my word. This is going to be a bit of a difficult one for Mitchell de Jong, but he's been in this same situation so many times, so he's going to head his way down the inside of one, get that done into the International Horseshoe, and those next 2 cars on his hit list should be disposed of quite quickly. I say hit list, hopefully he doesn't hit them.
Yeah, and we've seen our fair share of action over here at the second International Horseshoe, which is very similar right-hand turn compared to the first International Horseshoe at turn 3. This is turn 5.
Oh, look at that dive!
Turn 6. So that deep dive. Word. Oh, that could have been very scary, and that was DriveX diving on the inside of the Gianalessi number 4 car. That could have been very, very wrong for the Sergio Ignacio. I know you're trying to gain time, you know, you're trying to break away, but that could have gone very wrong, as you can see on the replay, Connery.
Yeah, look at this. DriveX Esports behind your overall race leader at the moment. 4 laps down, but look at this dive on the inside of the Mercedes. Bam! There we go. That is a bit of a dive there from DriveX. That was a BMW, excuse me, GTE machine. And he actually loses the the spot coming onto the banking, you will recover it because of the superior straight line speed of that Daytona prototype. But that is not an ideal way to get it done over the lap traffic for DriveX Esports. We'll just take another little look at it just to see this big almighty dive down the inside. And this is, I think, in my opinion, this is kind of unnecessary. That you've basically outbroke yourself down the inside there, and you also let the GTE car back through on the inside there, at least temporarily. So I'm not entirely sure what you have to gain by doing something like that.
Unless you're thinking that you're gaining time on Peter Berryman, because right now the gap is around 8 seconds between Berryman and Ignacio, and Berryman is in a different strategy, and he's due to pit soon, so you're going to get the position anyway. Why would you risk it again for a move like this? Could have gone very wrong. As let's see if he's going to pull out again, because in the same circumstances. And no, actually he just hangs back, plays it a little bit more safely as he comes out of the oval and overtakes the pure racing team.
Yeah, a little bit close on the transition onto the banking there, but it didn't scare either driver, didn't scare me at all. It's just a bit of a point to note. And I guess the objective here for DriveX Esports is just to try and hang in the draft of your overall race leader at the moment. You can see there's actually a little bit of damage to the front end of that DriveX Esports car, just on the driver's right-hand side. Hopefully we can get a different shot to be able to show you that. There you can see driver's left-hand side, our left-hand side, driver's right-hand side. That front clip is shunted in just a little bit. A bit of a flash of the lights from one of the Williams Esports cars there. Not exactly sure what that is about. Quanda were very courteous in terms of trying to get the overtake done there. Maybe it's just a bit of a flash of the lights from the broadcast. Maybe they have someone behind the scenes saying, okay, you're on camera now, just give us a bit of a light show.
Yeah, did they get clearance for it?
Sorry?
No, show off, a little bit of showboating? Flashing lights?
Well, we did have the situation, I think it was a couple of years ago with the driver, where they basically were constantly flashing the lights. And I mean, it was constant. It was almost like they had their lights matched to their throttle or something.
I think it was one of these entrance races. When was it? I remember seeing it live, but it was something like Spa or Le Mans that I remember the guy constantly flashing. I don't know who it was, but constantly flashing from really start to finish. I thought it was a bug or on his steering wheel or something of the sort, but no, it was actually voluntary.
Yeah, so, you know, some drivers can overdo it a little bit with the flashing lights, and some private leagues especially actually ban the overuse of the of the flashing light feature. So yeah, that's a thing. As DRS Wave Italy, they're pretty close to the VRS Quanda Sim Sports number 18 car at the moment. Quanda came onto the pit lane just about 2 laps ago here, so again, another big difference in terms of the strategy here between these two cars. But DRS Wave Italy, they wouldn't mind a P9, even just to hold it temporarily, as they'll come down on towards the pit lane next out of this. But they're sort of halfway through their stint right now, so it won't happen for a while. So again, I don't want to tempt fate here, Lorenzo, but maybe a pass for precision on, maybe not. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, we'll just have to see, but lap times from both drivers, it seems highly unlikely, to be quite honest, Justin. Sorry, Justin. I'm not Canadian. That I'm confused. I'll get it. I'm sorry, Connery. I'm sorry. So the problem is that Pascal just did his first lap. He was on his out lap, so the rubber was a little bit cold. You're still struggling with the car, trying to keep it on the track, but now you're building up the heat. So natural order, break off as soon as you can, and Pascali's got the message. The gap is around 1.5.
Up to 1.6, just as you see that change. Fluctuates in and out, of course, but DRS Wave Italy losing a bit of time here on this lap, so puts the percentage chance of the overtake down just that little bit. And since we're around about an hour done in this particular segment, so we might as well go RaceSpot TV fan immersion on board with one of your teams here today. And do you have any suggestions, Lorenzo?
Let me select over here. We had our looks with the GT3 field per se. Tell you what, let's grab some GP3 time with Marcus Jensen and listen to that Audi V10.
Let's do it. I have no complaints about that. So RaceBot TV fan immersion here for a lap or so on board with Pure Racing Team GT3. We'll be back in just a couple of moments.
Last lap time was 1:43.00.
Just a couple of moments there on board with Pure Racing Team GT3 inside that Audi currently in second place, and well, just having a look at the gap to RS competition, they're about a lap behind at this moment in time. So pending any touchwood problems with the RS competition car, it doesn't look like they'll be able to finish any further up the field at this point in time. RS competition have just been so dominant in that GT3 class. They haven't really looked behind. They haven't really looked behind them at this stage. There's nothing to be concerned about behind them. They're just running their own race right at the front of the field. But you can't get complacent though, even though everything has gone right for you through the vast majority of this race. It can only just be that one bit of lap traffic, or in the case of these GT3s, that one Daytona prototype that decides to go for a dive, maybe a bit of a lapse in concentration, a slight error that just throws everything in the bin. So you just have to keep focused.
Yeah, it's kind of like the shades of Spot 24 work in every single 24-hour race for every single team. It's not just Redline that is actually under the microscope of the shades of bad luck they actually got. Even though they still got a dominant lead, they still have a lap on the Red Bull. But you know what happened to Max Verstappen in this spot? He had the brake failure. Fortunately, they were a lap to the whole field, and then he got it in time. The driver's side, if I'm not mistaken, that was Lando that took over the car. The same can happen here, and we've seen that sim racing sometimes is a marvelous world with unicorns and horses and rainbows and sunshines, and it can just track in just the worst of times. As we have the Janalesi Esports Academy GTE having a driver swap. That is Mohamed Patel coming into the vehicle in place. If I'm not mistaken, that was Michele D'Alessandro.
Yeah, and we've seen this particular team before here in the iRacing special event side of things, the Jean-Elysée Esports Academy there. And they're going to come out in a little bit of traffic here, and that's a bit of an understatement. So they're going to have to deal with a good couple of GT3 cars as they rejoin the circuit here. They're able to get ahead of that Radicals Online AMD Mercedes, but still a lot of traffic to deal with here if you're Mohamed Patel. But it's interesting to see that, it's really been over the past couple of years where sim racing has really gained the respect of a lot of people on the real life side of things. And that's not just drivers, it's team bosses, a lot of the pundits as well that you get to see on broadcast. They're really sort of getting into sim racing at the moment, and they're seeing it as a sort of new discipline for motorsports. And when you remember that sim racing has been a thing since, competitive sim racing has been a thing since at least when GPL, Grand Prix Legends, came out, that is an absolutely huge amount of time to be doing this. And it was sort of in the background in terms of esports for a very long time. And now it's, over the past couple of years, it's really come to the forefront. And that's really, I think, because esports on other games, on other titles, has really taken off. You think about Counter-Strike, you think about League of Legends and Overwatch and how popular they're starting to become. And so as a result of that, a lot of companies and a lot of big names are starting to look at sim racing and say, well, maybe we can make something, make our own little esports thing here in terms of motorsports. And with motorsports and sim racing, that link is so much closer than some other esports. You have a look at football games, for example. The act of playing a football game and the act of actually playing football are two very different things. Meanwhile, the act of sim racing and the act of driving a real car are very similar, and that's what a lot of teams especially are looking at, especially Jean-Elysée Esports Academy here, to get their drivers behind the wheel and get the seat time, which they wouldn't otherwise have in the real world. Because a real world drive, let's face it, it's very expensive. Even if you're just at the very base level of karting, you're having to fork out so much money, thousands even for a season. And in sim racing, or at least on iRacing, you pay your subscription, you pay for the content, for the cars, for the tracks, and you can just go out there, and it's so much cheaper than doing it in the real world.
Yeah, it's kind of there's a cost benefit. You want to buy a car. I don't know how much it is over here in Brazil. You want to grab a car. You want to try to start over in karting. It's really expensive. It's around the 10K over here in our currency, just for you to have car chassis, maybe extra wheels or something like that. And the maintenance cost is expensive. You really want to put your kid, or you want to try to go into championships and try to build up a career so you can get picked up by bigger teams and get sponsored. But I think sim racing in this last 3 years, I think 2018 to 21, 19 is definitely it. 2017 was kind of like into a concept stage of sports car racing, but I think on this last 2 years, we see the solidification of sim racing, you know, staying hand to hand with real racing. We've seen like brands of like you're seeing BMW, you're seeing Porsche, you're seeing McLaren. These big brands offering not just opportunities to compete in leagues that are not just brought up by these brands, these automobile teams, but also giving drivers the opportunities. Even in NASCAR, it's a prime example. NASCAR is one of the probably the biggest brands in terms of sponsoring drivers, trying to bring drivers from the virtual to the world reality, and make sure they are actually capable drivers in their own. So I said it last year to some people. I think 2019 was the year of sim racing as a whole, you know, where we established ourselves. I think 2020 we can take sim racing to a whole nother level. We might be thinking, oh, is it going to be just as these games like FPS games or RTS or even Battle Royale? Maybe not, because it is a niche and it has that cost. But I think in terms of popularity and mainstream media, I believe we're going to get into that level. And we might not have the same audience, but it's going to be within that level. There will be a proper recognition of these.
Yeah, motorsports itself is still kind of a niche, and sim racing and motorsports esports is a niche within a niche, so to speak. But we've made so much progress over the last couple of years, especially here on iRacing, where we've had races broadcast on national television in the US on NBCSN for the eNASCAR series, and that must have been an absolutely insane experience, especially for the drivers, because you're driving to, you're used to driving maybe to a couple of thousand people watching, but when you're on nationwide TV, that changes things, and all of a sudden you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands potentially watching, and that must set the nerves in a little bit, because everyone's watching you.
Yeah, everybody's watching you, and you're getting more interest out of the sponsors. And we've seen when we started with iRacing, with the championships. The iRacing World Championship, the GT, the GP. The prizes were about being 10,000, which were for the time quite big. It was a big payout. The prize pool. Nowadays we have the prize pool of 100,000. We have single events like the BMW when you guys were at Frankfurt. If I'm not mistaken, you were at Frankfurt this one, where drivers were fighting for $10,000 in Daytona, to be more even exact. So we're seeing these similar events giving more payout to drivers, and they are starting to build off careers just out of sim racing. And this is really cool to see this progression that we have throughout these 3 years, the boom that we've had.
Yep, it's been absolutely fantastic growth, and it looks to continue into 2020. Of course, the new season of the eNASCAR series does start soon, and with the increased prize pool as well. So that one's going to be an interesting one. Of course, new seasons of the Porsche Esports Super Cup as well. The qualifying series for that is currently underway, and does get broadcast on the iRacing Esports network. So you can see drivers fighting for one of those 20 spots when it comes to the Porsche Esports Super Cup. The top 20 in that series already locked themselves in for the next season. So we'll get to see a few new names coming into that series for the next season. It's just a matter of who it's going to be, especially if you're one of those drivers that's sort of on the cut line of the top 20 looking to try and get yourself in. It's going to be really interesting, the dynamics, to see who actually gets in and who falls short. And it can be as close as a couple of points sometimes, and that must really be a kicker.
Yeah, it is going to be a kicker. We saw like top drivers like Bo Albert, for example. He was one of the drivers trying to qualify. If he have one bad race, he might even be out of contention. And he had the bad race, if I'm not mistaken, at Lime Rock, and unfortunately he had to withdraw from the qualifications. He's not going to be able to qualify. We know how good Bill Albert is as a sim racer, and having a guy lost like him would be huge in terms of grid quality, with grid quality, but still, it will come down. Even if you are in the top split, when it comes to qualification, it isn't enough. You know, you might be doing well in a race, then you go down bottom to the other one, and those points you have lost in the second race, but they make a lot of difference when it comes down to the final scoring.
It'll make this decent difference. Apex getting a little bit stuck behind the GTE traffic here. They will be able to send it down the inside for the International Horseshoe. So they'll be able to continue on their way, although the GT car does come back at them a little bit going off the corner. Bit of an interesting situation between the two of them, but Apex will be able to get clear in this situation. And just having a little look elsewhere to see if we can see any close battles starting to develop. The closest one that I can see right now is still MSI Esports and Williams Gym Esports Solari here, and you just see that MSI Esports closing in marginally over the last 2 laps. It's going to take a while at that pace to be able to catch up, but you know, every little helps in races like this. But of course, the car that they're trying to catch, the Williams Gym Esports Solari car, of course, they're running a memorial paint scheme for this particular race due to the unfortunate loss of one of their teammates over the past week. That is Martin Solari. Of course, they named their car after their driver as well. So it's a bit of an emotional time for that particular team. And our condolences do very much get sent to the team and, of course, the family of Martin Solari. But you know, racing in his memory here at the Daytona 24, doing very well as well. Currently in P5 at the moment, about 31 seconds behind the Evolution Racing team. So still potential for them to gain spots towards that podium here at the end of the race. But you know, it's something that you never want to see Martin Solari taking from us a bit too early, unfortunately. But those guys, for their sakes, I hope they get to the end, and I hope they have a good finish.
Yeah, I hope they get a good finish, and so far they've actually been doing that. That result, they're doing just what we want them to do it. You know, getting a top 5. They started back in the field. They started 30th, 3rd, which was around top 10, and top 10 were top 15 in the GT field. And they, through, you know, trials and tribulations, they got themselves up into the top 5. They are running very, very safe. Try to avoid as much confusion and collisions as possible. But and it is a good result. And if you are to look at Williams as a general team, they also got the Williams Esports Razor, which is at 9th position in the class. Just get out of pit lane. With still Andre Bocher in the vehicle. But you know, it's really important. Oh, Bocher having a little bit of an emotion going outside of the pit lane, hitting that outside barrier, and he's just scraping up the wall. I don't know if he had new tires or not, but a little bit of a sensible emotion for Bocher, as you guys can see on the replay.
He comes out side by side with another GTE machine. Let's see this on the replay there and see if we can catch him hitting the barriers. That view is not going to... Ooh, he hits the inside barrier. That's not usually the barrier you hit if you decide to, when you have issues coming off a pit lane. Just have another look at this. Oh, he hits... Oh yeah, he does hit the outside there, but that's weird.
Yeah, it's because you're trying to maximize the speed coming out of the turn. That turn, the ideal for the drivers is you're trying to get as much momentum as you can possibly get as you go into the International Horseshoe, because the only thing you really want aside hitting that wall is clipping those curbs, those little things that stay on the left side of the driver, because that offsets the car and can damage the suspension quite easily. He avoided that, but a bigger hit with more speed on that outside wall could have damaged the suspension quite heavily, and then that would be a bummer for that team.
Sim RC Titan was behind this, and they saw it all happen. Bang, into the wall. that's not ideal for that car ahead. But so, you know, you gotta hope, at least for their sakes right now, they don't have any damage to that right-hand side of the car. It wasn't the heaviest of taps with the wall, so I think they should be okay. But you know, any sort of aerodynamic damage here especially is going to really, really hurt you with how much time you are on full throttle here at Daytona. So they do have to be very, very careful indeed. And it doesn't look like they have any damage, at least as far as I can see. We'll get a better view as they head their way through the lap portion. You can see on that driver's right-hand side of the car, looks pretty clean to me, so I think they've gotten away with one here.
Yeah, I'm looking over here and trying to pay big attention to it, but no, there is some slight, you know, bend on the wheel side of the car, on the right, on the left, sorry, on the front right of the car. It's slightly bent. It's barely noticeable, but it's slightly bent. It's not going to affect the rest of the car. It's just funny damage.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I don't think they're going to be feeling the effects of that one. Maybe a kilometer an hour or two at most. That'll be affecting them. But down into the bus stop, yeah, again getting a little bit caught behind the GT3 machine coming through here. Again, not the most ideal spot to be able to get caught behind, but you just have to be patient here if you're in the GTEs, especially, you know, since they are the middle class here. Some people say that the middle class of an endurance race is one of the tougher classes when it comes to lap traffic, because you're having to get past slower cars while also paying attention to faster classes trying to come through on you. So it's really a skill set that you need to have when you're driving in one of these middle classes. Just that awareness about where to make moves and where to just stay in line and where to let other cars pass. But that's a very wide line being taken by Borcher into there. Very, very wide indeed into turn one. So I don't think he's entirely comfortable with that car at the moment.
Yeah, the tire must have picked up some, you know, rubber, not rubber, but, you know, marbles or some really small dirt in that outside part. It takes some time to go away. You lose a little bit of grip, but in terms of time itself, he didn't lose a lot of time for an outlap. His outlap was around 142, but his average was actually 141, 142, 141 mid to 42 mid high. So he's pretty much within the margin. Just that small mistake that cost him a little bit of that.
There's some discussion in the Twitch chat about whether a direct drive wheel makes you faster or not, and it's a little bit of a complicated question. I think you're going to gain less time by having a direct drive wheel than you are by upgrading your pedals, for example, because better pedals really do make a difference, especially you know, on the premium side, where you have a lot more feeling on the brake, and you can get that car stopped in so much better fashion than you could do otherwise with a brake pedal that only has a potentiometer, for example. So you're basically your standard Thrustmaster pedals or standard Logitech pedals, where it's just the distance traveled that gets counted as a brake input rather than the pressure you're putting on the brake, and that makes more of a difference than getting a direct drive wheel makes. But again, the direct drive wheels, they're absolutely amazing, at least in my opinion. But unfortunately, I'm having to deal with my bit of a budget wheel at the moment. So the direct drive wheel for me is not on the cards, but I've gotten to try them at events that I've attended as part of Racesport TV, and they do feel lovely.
Yeah, they do feel not only lovely, but they feel lively as well. You know, there is that the Newton meter, you know, difference that you have. G27, I'm driving for ZTF 300 RS. So if you try to drive a Simicube, a Bonner, or even, let's just say, an AccuForce, for example, you're going to get a lot of output and you're going to get a lot of feedback from that wheel. Yes. But then again, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought you'd finish your statement, but yeah, I kind of agree that it's, for the direct drive stuff, it's more about the information that you're gaining from the car more than anything. It's you're able to feel what the car is doing so much better. You know, if the car's getting loose, it'll tell you so much earlier than you'll be able to feel it through a budget wheel, for example.
Yeah, and then it comes in terms of how comfortable you are with the wheel, right? You can just set up for the right dials, try to set up for the amount of force feedback you really want to put in your car, and all kind of stuff. You get more options with Fanatec wheel, like not Fanatec, but you know, mid to high-end wheels where we get into the Fanatec CSW25, the TSPC.
We're not sponsored by any of these companies, by the way.
Yeah,
I just have to say that.
Not sponsored. Not sponsored. I'm just mentioning the brands. There you go. So you get more options to fiddle the steering wheel, where in the G27 it gets more complicated. But the brakes and the pedals itself, then that is actually different. Because with like high-end pedals and you get so much comfort in being able to customize to your needs, that brake or the accelerator, that clutch. You're gonna get more comfortable ways for you to drive and then maximize your time. Who knows, you can get into the level of some of these top drivers, but then again, it takes a lot of training and you have to be comfortable with the setup that you have.
We do have, finally, a close battle on circuit. 0.5 of a second, half a second between P5 and P6 at the moment. So that's Evolution Racing Team and AAA Esports Black. And we did mention this a little bit earlier, that AAA Esports were closing. It seems like they've been able to make it work here. They gained 0.9 of a second on that previous lap. And that's fantastic stuff from them. They do have the fresher tyres compared to the Evolution Racing Team car, so that's what has made up a decent amount of the gap. Of course, Evolution Racing Team hitting about 4 laps ago certainly did help. And so now, AAA Esports, you know, sometimes you act a little bit differently when you actually have the car that you're trying to fight with in your sights. It's all that carrot on the stick that encourages you to go faster.
Yeah, and in battles like this, you have to be considering to go for an overtake. I know there is a lap difference, laps older on my stand. Tires might be on the same range, but are you really want to go for the next mile just early on your stint and then be in the air? Just let the guy try to save as much as possible and try to, you're facing the wind, spinning as most fuel as you can possibly spin. Those are the questions right now that you have to be. We say even earlier in the race, you have to be paying attention to that. But now, where it becomes more of a sprint race, is where you want to position yourself more appropriately and start trying to take more risks. And here comes Calzabon once again, but I think he's just going to hang on the back bumper off himself for one more lap.
Left side.
Ooh, it's a bit wide though from that ERT car. Very late apex indeed. Maybe they convinced themselves, did Jared Filsell, that AAA Esports were going to go and dive down the inside there, but no, Thibaut Casbon just hanging behind his fellow GTE machine at the moment, and just remaining around about that 0.7 of a second behind. But still, more importantly for AAA Esports, very much in the draft, they can get their fuel saving mode engaged if they decide to do so, but if they are good on the fuel numbers, then maybe getting the pass done isn't a bad option either.
It's not a bad option, but I think Brendan O'Brien has brought up some interesting facts, and I agree with him because I remember now, is that the AAA on the entire race has been ahead of the Evolution. That's the first time the number 26 hasn't been in front of the 211. And Calzabon, we know how good Calzabon is actually as a race driver. We see him driving on the Porsche Esports Super Cup qualifiers, trying to get into one of those top 20s for this season. But the thing is, again, would you risk a move this early on your stint and then try to spend as much fuel as you can possibly can and have luck with the traffic trying to break off a guy that in fuel strategy is quite better than you?
Certainly an option that you have to consider. As I thought ERT were just about to head down towards the pit lane. They did dip below the yellow line just with 2 tires there. That kind of fooled me into thinking they were just going to decide to pit. But I wouldn't see why they would want to, considering 6 laps on their stint right now. But Jared Filsell just playing with us a little bit as AAA Esports Black decide to play the fuel saving game here, which is probably the safer option.
Because I forgot team speed is not on that mode. But here we go. Yeah, it is the safer option. Try to tip as much fuel as you can possibly save. Try to go for at least a 33 or 34 lap stint. If you can do that, you're going to be pretty much on the money. You're going to put around the half hour, 3 hours to go, or the way this is looking. You're going into your 10th lap of your stint. So far, Kosovo just playing it safe, trying to not get himself in any trouble, as there is a Radicals online about to overtake him over the oval. Maybe he can try to use that to sling shot himself. Let's see if Kosovo is going to.
Well, we got a battle for P4 in prototypes as well.
Okay.
That's going on between Torque Freak Racing Sunset and the Apex Racing team here. So that is one that's going to feature as well. So finally seeing a couple of battles start to develop here around about 4 hours and 20 minutes before the end of the race here. And Apex Racing team, they are relatively similar in terms of the strategy here compared to Torque Freak Racing Sunset. They're about 3 laps different in terms of the pits. Last time they had their way down onto the pit lane, and they had some relatively similar pit stop times as well. So you would have thought things would be relatively equal between the two of them. Let's just go on board with that Apex Racing team car. And you can see the forward progress that they've been trying to make. And you can see bottom right of the screen, 1.1 seconds gained, 6.5 tenths of a second gained, 3.5 tenths of a second gained. And all of a sudden, they're on the back of Torque Freak Racing Sunset, who is dealing with a little bit of rear end damage there. You can see just on the right-hand side of their car, there's a bit of aerodynamic damage, a little bit of bodywork just sticking up into the air, which is not going to help in terms of the drag for the Torque Freak Racing Sunset car. So they're really, really going to be feeling that at the moment, and they might just have to deal with that all the way through until the end of the race. But you can see Apex now closing in on the way in towards turn 1. The opportunity isn't going to arise this time around. Ooh, a bit of a moment there. Apex Racing team getting their braking wrong a little bit into the first corner that time, but yeah, I've seen so many cars have moments there, and it just shows how difficult that corner is.
Yeah, that is a really difficult corner, and to make it matters worse, you have one of the VRS commanders and Kushali Gurgis right ahead of Chris Fuller, and if you're Fuller, you want to try to break yourself away as fast as you can, and here goes Fuller, nearly a massive sin on the inside of the second international horseshoe at turn 5. But you said it perfectly, Dave. That rear end damage on the right side is not only affecting the wing, but affects the diffuser. Diffuser is going to affect a little bit of how the tires perform and how aerodynamically going to some of the cars get a little bit loose, and that might play an advantage to Apex, but Berryman just playing it safe for now and not trying to get overly aggressive.
You can't quite get a good car view of the damage, but on board with Torque Freak Racing Sunset, you can see the Apex Racing team car just still in their slipstream at the moment. Torque Freak a very good run coming through the bus stop chicane, though. They just gained a whole bunch of time over their competitor there. So Chris Fuller certainly not struggling in terms of the twisty bits, but when it comes to those straights, that damage is going to mean they're down maybe a couple of kilometers an hour here. So Apex Racing team will soon be able to close up, but the thing is, for Torque Freak Racing Sunset, they do have the draft of a VRS Quantum Sim Sports car ahead of them, so they're going to be using that to try and keep Apex at bay for now.
Yeah, they're gonna keep them at bay a little bit, but the thing is, you really don't want to lose a lot of time. You see Berryman just calling and just knocking on your door, and Gurgis small slide to the Torque Freak, but still keep the car on track. You lose a lot of time, but I think he's getting a little bit problematic for Fuller. I know this is the first lap I'm seeing on the fuel lap that actually reaches the 37 field. All of his laps were on the 38, just his last two were on the 37, so finally getting the rhythm of the car, but I think that is just way too late, and Berryman nearly on the back end. No, that was close.
That was
Connery, take it away.
That was a big attempt there, big late move in the braking zone for Apex Racing team. That was a bit hopeful down into there. So Peter Berryman making a couple of errors at this point, which isn't helping his task of trying to overtake that Torque Freak Racing Sunset car. And right now he has to go down the inside of the AMG Mercedes into the bus stop chicane. But that was not ideal there for Peter Berryman. And again, it's another small error that does add up. And you do have to be careful, because you know, maybe next time you have that small error, you're not going to have the clear space on the exit of the corner to run wide. There might be a car there.
Yeah, there might be a car there. Luckily, the car that was ahead of him was actually the DP, so straight line speed and corner speed is basically insane. The big issue is that not on the previous lap, not this one he just opened, the previous one, he made a mistake on the bus stop. Just flipped the inside part of the bus stop way too deep and got an instant. And I know he might have got an instant over here as well. And now, is he going to die from that MSI? No, he's not going to, but he's going to lose a little bit of time being overtaken in the pit.
Yeah, he's going to have to get it done inside the kink, and it can sometimes be a sketchy situation doing that, but a lot of space given by that BMW to try and facilitate that pass. And it might as well. Still a decent amount before the end of this race. As Apex Racing Team have lost a bit of time as a result of that. Gap is back up to about 0.5 of a second, but you know, it's not going to be worrying right now. What would be worrying is if they drop outside the slipstream, but they've already caught up the gap to be in the slipstream in the first place, so even that might not be a concern from them. But the longer this takes, though, the worse their position is going to be in terms of challenging for positions even further up the field when it comes to those final couple of hours. So they do have to be, do have to get this one over and done with, but it's not going to be a rush to get it over and done with, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's because you still got a time. You still have more than 4 hours for you to make that overtake. But I think that is the first time I've seen Apex in a top 4, maybe top 3 conversation where they can actually try to overtake Cognitive. I haven't seen them close to Torque Freak in this past previous things. So they might have an opportunity over here to move up a spot. It's just a matter of when. Looking at Bergman's laps right now, he has around 7, 8 laps for him to capitalize on that overtake.
Yeah, he does. A little bit of jink towards the outside into the International Horseshoe, but they're still spending a lot of time here behind Torque Freak. And like I said, Torque Freak are being helped by that Coanda car that's currently giving them the draft. And I think if they didn't have the draft of the Coanda car, this battle might be done already. But since Torque Freak are just able to park inside of that Coanda slipstream, it's going to negate the effect of their damage for one, and for two, it just keeps them ahead of Apex. Even though Apex are technically getting the double draft, it doesn't seem to be enough to be able to get the pass done.
Yeah, not being able to slingshot that Torque Freak car, they keep him at bay lap by lap. I think so far he's doing a good job, Mr. Chris 4. But, you know, it builds up frustration because you get so close to that Coanda car, you know you're on the verge of overlapping him. You get into traffic right now as they go into the bus stop once again, where you got a GT3, that's the Movano GT3, so close, and now you're just losing a little bit of time. It isn't much, but allows once again Berryman to close down the gap. And it's a very interesting battle, to be quite honest, because you have these drivers going on, and now there's a problem. Here comes Coanda on Charlie Gergens in the pits.
Yeah, so Coanda now in the pit lane. Now Torque Freak don't have a car ahead of them. They can draft off of another error for Berryman into the first corner. He hasn't really got the braking down for that section. So really needs to sort that out because, again, you know, these small errors do add up. And if you do that while side by side with another car, yeah, goodbye to your race.
Yeah, goodbye to your race. We've seen something like that with the Williams and Red Bull, you know, going side by side in places where you shouldn't go in the first place. And we saw that domino effect of Williams Chill Blast actually have to take an early DNF. It isn't early, it's kind of like a late DNF, but it's a DNF.
It might be this time around into the bus stop, perhaps, as they go on to the NASCAR banking. And we can get a very good view of this one. You can just see, without that slipstream, Torque Freak are just a sitting duck. Look at the overspeed for Apex Racing Team at the moment, down the inside, coming in towards the braking zone for the bus stop. And that was a very short-lived battle indeed, because Torque Freak Racing Sunset were having none of it. Although, did Apex just run wide off that final apex of the bus stop? I think they did. They might just have themselves a slowdown penalty here. We'll just have to wait and see. But it looks like they're okay. But that was very close.
Yeah, that is very close. That is on the borderline of you getting a penalty because if you go more to the left, if you have the third wheel to the left side, as you guys can see over here on the replay, the overtake done by Berryman, he goes way too deep on that part of the grass. And I see many cars taking that part of the grass. You take a 1X, it is fine. But if you go 3 wheels on that grass, then you gotta slow down. And again, it is a 1.1 to 1.5 second slowdown, and that's gonna hurt you a lot if you're trying to battle against cars like this.
There it is. So Apex Racing Team through. They're up into P4 at the moment. So we can look elsewhere now because you see AAA Esports Black and Evolution Racing Team still basically stuck together like glue at the moment. See AAA Esports currently that car behind, and maybe a little bit of a stack up here inside of the bus stop section, and they're going to lose a big chunk of time as a result of that. It's up to 6.5 tenths of a second right now, but still very much inside of that draft to the Evolution Racing Team car. So not a panicked situation just yet here for AAA Esports. Again, like I mentioned before, they are on the fresher tires, so should be doing their best work coming through the infield section and through the bus stop. But they still haven't been able to work their way by on that ERT car just yet. So, you know, it just goes to show how still good the older tires are, even a couple of a stint or so on them.
Especially with the track right now actually being more hotter than actually when we started. We started, if you guys want to take a look, we started at 22 degrees Celsius ambient, and then the track was around 24 degrees Celsius. Right now it's at 21 degrees on the ambient, but the track right now 1 degree higher than when it started, and it's just gonna get hotter. I think when we reach midday, it should reach the 30s, and then again, you know, those squad maybe stints might be thinking of. Again, you know, when we mentioned it earlier, and I mentioned throw it out of the garbage. You throw it out of the garbage, then incinerate that thing.
Yeah, not really going to be possible with the track conditions that we have here at the moment. But AAA Esports, they're currently the Devil's number tenths of a second behind the Evolution Racing Team car. Didn't quite get that on screen for you in time, but 0.666 seconds behind their competitors at the moment, and have a bit of a slipstream from the Ferrari ahead of them as well, and they're closing up, and they'll be able to bring it side by side with that car into turn number 1, and are they able to squeak their way by? Not quite just yet. So the Ferrari really being a bit of a nuisance as far as AAA Esports are concerned, and it loses them at least a tenth of a second or so to the ERT car. So gap back up to, well, I'm looking at it, it still remains 6/10 of a second. So they actually didn't lose a lot of time trying to fight with that fellow GTE car that's laps down on them. So Thibaut Casabon will be thankful for that he didn't lose a lot of time just going side by side with the same class there. But it's sometimes an awkward situation when you're trying to lap cars of the same class, because you don't have that speed differential in your favor to try and get it done quickly. You're having really to rely on that lap down car to just help you a little bit.
And right now I think AAA just got a massive help from Match GT3, who blocked at the entry of the oval the car from Evolution, the number 26, and he keeps the Calzabon just on the back bumper of that number 26. He's probably not going to go for the move. He's just going to hang back, and yeah, he's going to definitely hang back. He's definitely saving fuel. He knows he wants that long strategy, so he's not panicking one bit and playing my games on that 26 car of the Australian.
You see on that last lap especially, 4.5 tenths of a second gains by AAA Esports Black. So this is going to be one of their best opportunities in a while. They might be spoiled by that Daytona prototype currently in their rear view camera, as these GT cars, they don't have rear view mirrors, they have a rear view camera coming through towards turn number 1. You can see AAA Esports actually very early braking into there. So either that's a massive lift and coast. Well, it must be a massive lift and coast because they lost a lot of time in the braking zone to the ERT car that was, you know, side by side with a Daytona prototype into that first turn. So AAA Esports trying to make these fuel numbers work.
Yeah, the fuel save action is engaged once again. We've gone into a little bit of BMW 120 realms once again, where drivers are going to save in the battery capability of fuel. Even the Evolution saved quite a bit of fuel because they were coasting just before the Team Redline car overtook them. But still, it isn't a massive save compared to the car right behind them. But both teams tried their best capabilities trying to save fuel.
Yep, they are. It does rid us of a battle a little bit, but of course, the drivers and teams thinking about the long game here. This one you have to in a 24-hour endurance race. No matter how much we complain about them not going side by side, the better option for AAA Esports is just make sure they can hit their fuel numbers and look to try and make the strategy work for the end of the race. And we're around about 4 hours away from that at this point, so the end is fast approaching here for the iRacing 2020 Daytona 24 hours. We're just going to have a little bit of a look at the state of play in terms of your top 8 here. So we can see that VRS Co and the SimSport currently lead in your Daytona prototypes. And Team Redline DP number 2, 1 lap behind them in P2. Their sister car, the Team Redline DP1 car. During the night, driver had technical problems and dropped from the race twice, and they decided to park it after that. So it's the Team Redline DP2 car that has to now represent Redline inside of that prototype class, and they're currently 1 lap behind your race leader. So it's not going to be the greatest of situations for Redline in terms of trying to take the race win, but P2 is still going to be a very, very good finish indeed. Super Sport Racing, they're currently in P3 in Daytona Prototypes. Apex Racing Team in P4. Talk Freak Racing Sunset P5 with DriveX Esports in P6. Simicube and X Racing in P7. Team RSO will round out your top 8 in your Daytona Prototype class. And Lorenzo, just go through the top 8 in GTE.
Let's go with the top 8 in GTE, as we have Team Redline GT taking the first spot, and Red Bull Racing Esports, the only car within the lead lap of that Team Redline number 71 in second place. CMRC, the Titan, is in third, followed by Evolution Racing Team number 26, and just behind them, as we were seeing not long ago, the AAA Esports Black in fifth. Sixth place is the William Jim Esports Solari 88. In 6th place, 7th is MSI Esports GTE, and rounding out your top 8 is Williams Esports Razor with a number 12 car.
And looking at your slowest class here today, the GT3 machines. You see RS Competition there on the live pictures. They currently lead this class and have done so for a while. They're a lap ahead of the Simsa Esports GT3 machine. You also have Pure Racing Team GT3 currently in 3rd place at the moment. They're sort of trading the place with Simsa at the moment as these pit stop cycles come and go. Core Sim Racing, they're in P4 at the moment. They've recently, over the last couple of laps, come down in for a stop. You have S2V Esports in P5, Evolution Sim Sports Raptor in P6, Nirvana Sim Racing Yellow P7, and NB Esports Racing rounding out your top 8 in your GT3 class. And that's how the top 8s look like in each class, with 4 hours remaining of the iRacing Daytona 24 hours. And it's around about that time again that we'll go RaceSport TV fan immersion on board with a team, and I'm just going to do it with Talk Freak Racing Sunset with Chris Fuller, as he got passed by Apex Racing Team not too long ago, but he's still been able to keep himself inside the draft of that Apex Racing Team car, so he can get that fuel saving done and can make himself good in terms of the strategy here inside the final 4 hours. RaceSport TV fan immersion on board with Talk Freak Racing Sunset and Chris Fuller.
93.07.
There we go. Couple of laps on board there with Talk Freak Racing Sunset. We have 4 hours to go here in the iRacing Daytona. 24 hours to start off the 2020 endurance racing, well, and special event season here on iRacing. I'm Connery Maddock. I'm joined by Lorenzo Bonda. We'll get to see both Tobias Bruckmann and Dane Baird towards the end of the race as well on the commentary. So it's not just going to be the two of us to try and complete the race here. We will get a couple of friends inside of the commentary booth. Speaking of, though, if you're a member of one of the teams here in the top split, don't be afraid to give us a little bit of a call and jump inside the TeamSpeak, and we'll be able to get ourselves a little bit of an interview with you to try and see how your race is going. That option is always open to the drivers here inside of the top split, and you know, there's only so much people can stand of the two of us, Lorenzo.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I commentated 6 hours. Pleasure to commentate 6 hours in an event like this. Is one of my favorite events. Again, I cannot say, I'm probably going to mention this once again. I'm sorry, Connery. It's because I've been in this track. It was one of the best experiences of my whole life in terms of, you know, going to race tracks. The atmosphere is amazing. Just to drive over here, I love driving in Daytona. I missed driving in Daytona last year because I wasn't the real thing. So, unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to drive this year. Once again, my team retired the car went kaput. But yeah, guys, don't be shy. You guys can come in. If you guys driven on the top split, be here to come and review. Just talk to us a little bit. We don't bite. I don't bite, I think. I think Connery doesn't bite.
I bite very hard. I'll have you know.
Okay. And I know Tobias bites a little bit, and I know definitely Dane bites. I know as much.
Yeah, there are some situations where I ruffle a few feathers, I think. It's probably the best way I can describe things. But I'll be nice this time around, I'll be sure. But a couple of people, well, there's someone in the YouTube chat saying, so are you all in the same spot or commentating from different parts of the world? That's a very interesting question. For these online events, yes. I'm in the UK. Lorenzo is in Brazil. Of course, later on we'll see Tobias. He comes from Germany. Dane Baird, he's from the UK as well. We had Randy Chenmouth a bit earlier on. He's from the US. We had David Haynes from Australia. So it's really sort of an international team here at Racesport TV. And when we actually get to do the live events, actually at a venue, we are usually at that venue as well. And usually it's the European side of Racesport that gets to do those. But hopefully, fingers crossed, at some point, there'll be events in North America or Australia or whatever that we'll be able to send people to. But there are no plans for that at the moment, at least as far as I'm aware. But at least on the European side of things, if there is a live event, we'll be there. And Lorenzo, are there any sort of live racing lands in Brazil that you could potentially get on the broadcast for?
to get in broadcast, I'll be very honest. I was talking with a few race league organizers. No, sim racing in Brazil is something that is slowly growing because we're finally getting to a point, I think, in Brazil that we are starting to build more professional, organized teams. You know, that Positive basically has an entire Brazilian squad. Renan Zeredo, Jeff Chiassi, and Adaildo Vieira. So they're starting to get more Brazilian drivers and more South American drivers involved with some of the top teams, not just in Europe but North America. So we're trying to get more recognition, and I think soon enough, I'm not going to say this year, but maybe next year we might get a live event like a LAN event. But one thing I can definitely say, this is a promise. I made it to myself. I got a friend that is about to get married this year or next year. I'll be at Sim Racing Expo either in 2020 or 2021. This is a promise.
Okay. All right. See you there, I suppose, because I'm definitely going to make the trip as well. I've been for the last 2 Sim Racing Expos, and of course the most recent one, we moved into the arena venue at the Nürburgring, which is such an insane experience. And we had a decent amount of spectators for the final as well, and to have that sort of atmosphere around the sort of sim racing event, because you know you have those events quite often in other esports, especially in Counter-Strike, where it seems like every other week there's a big arena event going on, but we don't get that in sim racing at the moment. And Sim Racing Expo is probably the only one at this point that can qualify as a quote-unquote arena, even though it's quite small when we talk about arenas. But that was such an insane experience for me, especially with the driver introductions that we did, with Will just basically shouting on the top of his lungs, like he tends to do. Let's be fair, introducing the drivers. It was sort of like a WWE wrestling moment as all the drivers were making their entries with their own music. It was brilliant.
You know, by saying WWE, you might have made Will just have feel happy for a few moments.
Mention wrestling, Will instantly goes, wait, someone mentioned wrestling?
As someone mentioned wrestling, we would be surprised if Will comes down into our TeamSpeak. He
is still in the TeamSpeak. He's probably still asleep,
in TeamSpeak, yeah. So he unmutes himself and does any mention about wrestling. So, but yeah, it is a cool thing. The closest thing I've done was like being in a league match in Counter-Strike in the LAN party. That's the closest thing I've been, but it wasn't commentating. I wasn't back in the booth. It was actually in the field, gaming. So it is. I want to see that perspective live, done by somewhere behind the booth. Behind the scenes, how it works, how it functions. It's one of the things that I'm looking for when I go over there.
On your right.
Yeah, we'll definitely give you the opportunity if we're able to make it out here, because there are a lot of races that go on. There are so many qualifying races, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, whatever. So you'll get an opportunity if you are able to make your way here. But the thing is there's not much point in me saying that, because I don't make the decisions. Will and Hugo do. So I guess you'll have to convince them.
Yeah, I'll try to use my negotiation abilities, try to get myself at least 1 minute of broadcast. I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, but a lot of people continuing to ask where is Max Verstappen, and we also had a little bit earlier go on board with Jimmy Broadbent. That's not possible unless I want to exit out of this session and go into the session that Jimmy is in, and then go for an onboard, which sounds like too much effort and will be too much of a meme for a broadcast like this. So unfortunately, that's not going to happen. It's interesting to see. I guess I haven't really been keeping track of how Jimmy's doing, so maybe a couple of his fans can just say how well he's doing in his particular split. I know he did get a 24-hour race win last time.
He was P2 in his class, so as far as I know, that's all I know from fans. I'm not watching the race. I'm basically paying attention. There's no disrespect to Jimmy. He's a nice guy. He streams a lot. And I know his fan base. He's quite, devout fan base. So I believe he's gonna get good results. Because lately on the split, he's been getting good results. So good for Jimmy if he has a good result on his split.
Yeah, we're hoping for the best for Jimmy Broadbent. I've met him in person as well. I've not really had a deep conversation with him for a long time, because we used to commentate together, at least for a couple of races years ago, in one of the endurance leagues on here on iRacing. So I've shared a commentary booth with him, but after his little stint with RaceSport, obviously he's gone on to do bigger and better things with his YouTube channel, and we very much appreciate what he's done for sim racing. But unfortunately, for everyone asking in the chat, not in this race, but if he gets his iRating high enough, or one of his teammates iRating high enough, then he could make an appearance at some point, maybe.
Yeah, who knows? I know in Le Mans he was actually in third split in the LMP1, so there is a possibility.
I mean,
Sorry,
that means
not
like,
third split. He was in second split, believe it or not.
Yeah, the thing is, that means Jimmy needing to get a higher I rating, and even he would admit that's going to be a tough job for him.
Hashtag get good scrub.
I'm just gonna throw a little bit of shade there. So it might have to be one of his teammates that has to do that. But oh god, I'm gonna die from all of the people complaining now. But there we go. We see Tetra Rouge racing down onto the pit lane. This is one of sort of the cars towards the back end of the midfield in your GTE class. We haven't given much love to them throughout this race, but oh my word, that last name is going to cause me a bit of an issue. Nicholas Dugny? That's the way I'm going to say it.
I'm going to say Dugny, but then again, my French has been broken for quite a while, so I think your French is better than my car.
Either way, Nicholas heads his way out of the pit lane and in P12 at the moment for the 777 Ferrari. And that's an interesting thing to note because the vast majority of teams have gone with the BMW for this race. And, you know, in terms of the band's performance, definitely the stronger option here. But some teams, especially in the lower splits, they have a car that they know all their drivers are comfortable with, and they don't want to make the transition to the BMW, which is why you might see, you know, a couple of Ferraris and a couple of odd cars here and there that are not suited to the track. It's more because the team is more comfortable with it rather than the car being the best for the track.
Yeah, and people might say, "Oh, BMW too strong, please nerf 2OP." You know, all these kind of memes. It might be true for Daytona itself. Other tracks, the BMW doesn't overperform like it does over here. But I'm quite surprised if we were to look over the perspective of some teams. Not long ago, if we were to look at Prologue on Nordic Le Mans, they were driving the Ferrari, and on this race they are driving the BMW, and we know how good of a team they are with the Ferrari. So it's kind of surprising they went with the car that might be stronger for this track. Well, it is a one-off event, even though you get iRating, safety rating, but still, it's quite surprising some decision of the teams that are more used with cars like Ferrari, Ford, and even the Porsche.
That was at 142.92.
Yeah, so that's a comfort issue, a big thing for a lot of teams here today. You know, but of course, in these prototypes, there's only one car that you can choose, and that is the Daytona prototype here. So not going to be an issue for them. But when it comes to LMP1s, for example, you do have the option of going for the Porsche or the Audi. And a lot of teams prefer the Porsche in that particular instance. Of course, the Audi has the benefit in terms of it's a lot more economical in terms of the fuel. But a lot of teams thinking that it doesn't have enough of an advantage in the pit stops to be able to deal with the Porsche. But that's LMP1 stuff. We have Daytona prototypes in this race, so that's kind of irrelevant at this point. But still, these guys are working their way through at the moment. There's Talk Freak Racing Sunset. They did have Apex Racing Team pass them around about 30-45 minutes ago at this point, and they've lost, let's see, about 6 seconds to them over the course of the last couple of laps, and losing 1 second on that previous lap as well. So maybe the bigger concern for them at this point might be Inex Racing behind them, because you can see 10 seconds is the gap right now, and that's starting to close in as well. So Justin Brunner putting in some decent laps to make that gap seem a little bit less. But Talk Freak Racing Sunset, they're just caught in a bit of an awkward situation right now where they are basically sort of on the either on the older tires or on the slower driver, whereas everyone else here in the mid-pack with these Daytona prototypes has the complete opposite. So they're in an interesting spot right now, but I have no doubt their strategy is going to at least bring them back into things inside the final couple of hours.
Yeah, and one thing that we have to notice as well is that both the diffuser, the diffuser, the back end, and the wing of that torque free is actually repaired, so it's going to help a whole lot Chris Fuller in terms of speed, acceleration, and stability on the motor. So it's and he has the rubber advantage over Inex, because if I'm not mistaken, Inex has pitted quite a while. They might have been on their 18th or 19th lap stint on for Justin Brunner. So the key over here for Fuller is just try to break it away as much as he can possibly break, and try to close down on the best capabilities of Apex to try to retain that position. Because so far, they're been neck to neck, and less than 4 hours to go, we're approaching 3 hours and 40 to go. It's 3 hours of battle, because if he's still playing a game like this, it will come down to maybe a splash and go, and whoever gets the splash and go best will come out on top.
You see up on screen, AAA Esports, they've lost a big chunk of time here to that Evolution Racing Team car. They're 1.6 seconds behind. The huge train of prototypes actually going around the outside of them, heading their way through NASCAR turns 1 and 2. And they might have just had to back off a little bit coming into the bus stop to try and facilitate all those passes. But as a result, 1.5 seconds behind ERT, so you're starting to really just be on the tail end of the draft here and that risk of dropping off the back. So Triple Esports do need to be careful. They have to hope that Evolution Racing Team are going to be impeded by those prototypes more than they were, to try and bring them back into contention here to get to it. Well, they just got their way through there, and the gap is already back down to around about 1.2, 1.1 seconds into the International Horseshoe. So AAA Esports having a very tough couple of laps here. Let's hope for Fibok Hasbon, excuse me, that they were able to at least recover things somewhat, and we can get this potential battle back on. But I know in reality it's not a battle, because AAA Esports has been fuel saving all day.
Yeah, and they're going to be coming down this, if not on this lap, maybe on the other one. And that is going to be actually real good for them, because 34, if you get that 24 benchmark in terms of laps and you're still effective, that is going to be outstanding in terms of, you know, race perspective. You might have to do less of fuel, or even save a pit stop like me and we were talking about, Justin as well, we were talking earlier about this. If you can save a pit stop, do less than pit stop and someone else, that's going to be amazing. If you can do a splash and go and they still come out ahead on traffic, it's going to be also amazing. So far, calls have gone, you know, just regain on the draft a little bit, because Jared actually had a little bit of a slide coming out of the entry in the oval section, and he's going to be able to save a little bit of fuel, but I don't think he's going to be in that save that will be.
Yeah, it's going to be a sort of, again, the similar sort of situations as we've had over the past couple of hours, where they're just going to sit behind and try and get the field numbers done. We just saw VRS kind of Sim Sports hit from the overall race lead, so getting their pit stop service done, and they still have a very, very comfortable buffer over Team Redline DP2. Team RSO, though, they are also on the pit lane. I just saw them drop off my time-in screens, and I got very, very concerned for them. But no, they're just getting the driver change done. They are on the pit lane. Niels Bendik's there in that 117 car. Going to be taking maybe the final couple of stints here. So for some teams, this might be the final driver change that they do. We'll see a lot more final driver changes once we get inside that final 3 hours. But some teams might decide to do it early, especially if they're doing 4 stints a piece for their drivers.
Yeah, and you know, they're going to be bringing the best drivers, you know, the best closers. I don't know if you have more experience than me on this one, you know, in terms of overall viewing of the drivers. I think there is such thing as closers. You want to bring the best hop lappers, best guys that you know, goes pedal to the metal every single lap and not give up 1 inch off the track, so you can try to maximize your time. And also the fuel, don't care about fuel saving, just go for positions. I think there's something about having closers, but I don't know who would be the closer for those teams.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I actually think it's a little bit more complicated than that. It sort of depends on the context of the race that the team has had already and what they have to gain towards the end of the race. Because if you're not looking to really gain that many positions at the end of the race, you'd want a driver that's consistent and makes very little mistakes in the car to bring it to the end. But if there are positions on the cars that you can go and chase, then yes, you do want that driver that is aggressive and can set consistent quick laps to be able to catch them down. But you know, it all depends what the situation is for each team at the end of the race. So for someone like VRS Quantum Sim Sports, for example, as your overall race lead that have a lap advantage over second place, you're gonna want someone who is very, very safe behind the wheel to bring it to the end, because you're not under any imminent threat. So you can just afford to maybe back off a little bit and just nurse the car home, nurse the car to the end. But if you're someone like Talk Free Racing Sunset here or Inex, for example, that are still involved in active battles, if not on track but on the strategy, then you really do want that very quick driver in at the very end, even though they might be prone to more mistakes.
And they might be prone to more mistakes. But the thing is, we've come down to an area of the race that we also have to consider that 100x challenge. That some of the teams, I don't know, we cannot see. Here's the thing, we cannot see how many penalties these teams have. Only if we had like an admin, we were race steward or something like that. Unfortunately, we cannot give you that information. You have to get the based off the teams. But judging from some of the guys taking the driver laps, as we have both Kozabon and the Evolution Racing team coming out into the pit lane, it is going to be a very interesting development in terms of how much aggressiveness can you do and how much penalty incidents can you take before you get a penalty.
Yeah, that ERT car in, and at the exact same time as AAA Esports Black car. So that's going to be the battle that we've been watching for a good while, coming down in at the exact same time. But will the gap be the same coming off of the pit lane? That is the issue here. Of course, we'll see a difference in terms of maybe the strategy for this particular pit stop. We'll just have to wait and see. Usually around 34 seconds is the double stint, and there we go. Both cars off at pretty much the exact same time. Look at this, though. Give me 1 second. Pit stop time for AAA Esports, a 34.3. Pit stop time for the Evolution Racing team, a 34.2. Just 1/10 of a second difference.
Yeah, 1 second difference, and it's pretty much equal. They came down the same speed into the pit lane. It's not kind of a synchronized stuff for both teams, to be quite honest, and you can see how the technical level of these drivers are coming into those pit lanes. And Daytona is a very hot pit lane. You're coming into high speed, and it is a very, very aggressive braking, even though you look kind of like it is 55 miles per hour when you're coming down in the pit lane. That's around 88 kilometers, but still it is a heavy braking line. For some of these cars, it's worse on NASCAR, but the good problem these are on track. There is some difficulty for your brake. Trust me, I can test this as I've done this in IMSA.
There we go, riding on the back of that Evolution Racing Team 26 car. Both of these cars on the same strategy at this point, both deciding not to take tires at that last stop. Although AAA Esports still on a little bit fresher tires here, because this is basically a triple stint for Evolution Racing Team at this point, and this might finally be the move. AAA Esports towards the outside here, coming through the NASCAR bends. They'll get the run off the corner by coming down a little bit higher off the circuit. Side by side then, as they head their way through the tri-oval. And look at this, it's going to be Team Redline, excuse me, that are currently having a little bit of a battle and getting themselves involved there. So that is a little bit early to the punch there for me. I'm sorry, I've been commentating for a while. Not as long as Lorenzo, though, but we still saw some side-by-side action, even though it wasn't a collision. There we go.
Yeah, it was an overlap. I was actually going to mention that was the red line.
Interrupt me next time.
I was going to
I just took it and ran with it.
I was like, Connery? You know what the kid, when your kids want to pull you a parent shirt for attention, like, Dad? It's something like it.
I need another energy drink. That's going to be the situation.
Yeah.
I do.
The marvelous world of sim racing.
Hey, if that's the only mistake I make during the broadcast, then I'll count the 6 hours as still very good, I suppose. But getting a little bit excited prematurely. You can see the gap, still 1.5 seconds between those. 1.3 seconds now. So there we go. Evolution Racing Team extending the gap just a little bit. You know, I'm so desperate for some side-by-side action. That was a little bit early, but there we go. We also should check in maybe with a couple of GT3 cars, because we haven't given them much love. There's your race leader in GT3s. Lasse back as part of the RS competition car, still going along relatively well here in that AMG Mercedes, lap ahead of Pure Racing Team GT3. So going along very, very well here. The closest battle in GT3s that I can find here must be this battle between MB Racing and DRS Wave Italy. But look at that, DRS Wave Italy just losing time, hand over fist to MB Esports Racing right now. So that one's not going to be a possibility in the immediate future here, unfortunately, as that gap extends just that little bit more. So with everyone else, again, like I said a little bit earlier on, this is setting the stage for that final hour where all of the strategies, well, all the strategies, their final card has been played, and we'll get to see where everyone is actually on track and not have that, people being on completely different strategies interfering with our calculations. There's your overall race leader of VRS Sim Sport, Martin Kroenke, pretty much a legend here on the iRacing side of things. Of course, like so many World Championships to his name. Of course, that was when they were in the open wheel cars in the McLaren. But since the World Championship has gone to the Porsche Esports Super Cup and using the Porsche Cup car there, he hasn't done as well, but he did pick up a feature race win last season at Mid-Ohio, I believe. So he still got it, but maybe doesn't have it in these tin top cars, or at least doesn't have as much confidence behind the wheel of the tin top cars compared to the open wheels that he's used to.
I think for Martin Kroenke, the last 2 years in terms of that adaptation coming from the F1s when he was driving the McLaren in P4 and then the Williams cars. I think he was a champion under the McLaren when he beat Gregor Huttu at the iRacing World GP Championship. I think it was the McLaren. Yeah, it was the McLaren. So the transition you do from open wheel to GT, it isn't supposed to be big, but there is quite a hefty difference because you're so used to driving open wheelers, and there is so much downforce and heat on those cars, especially the F1 car, that the way you drive GT is so much different, and that's why he struggled with a few results. You said he just got one feature win at the Porsche Super Cup at Mid-Ohio, but I think Kroenke still has what it takes to be, fighting for the championship at Porsche and then some other leagues. You know how capable he is. But if we're to look at the entire Coenda lineup, let's take a real look over here. They got Mitchell de Jong, he's a iRacing World Rally Cross champion. They got Joshua Rogers, which is the Porsche Super Cup champion. And then they got Martin Kroenke, which is a 3 times iRacing GP champion.
Yeah.
Do you want a bigger star power than this in iRacing?
Yeah, they have so many World Championship winners as part of their roster that they can really rely on. Go on.
No, I was going to say, and don't take it away, because they still have Tommy, Oscar, and Phillips in the support. Oscar driving a few laps, and Oscar, we know how good he is. Even though they got Street World Champions, don't take it away from Oscar. He's a highly competent driver.
We have a new voice in the commentary booth. Tobias Brockman joins us here. So it's not just going to be me and Lorenzo at the moment. Tobias, I know you've had a pretty frustrating morning.
Yeah, definitely. For whatever reason, my ISP decided on a Sunday to do something on its connection, and it took me off the grid for 3 hours.
Yeah, not ideal, and it just meant that Lorenzo had to do overtime, I suppose, when it comes to his commentary duties. So I guess you have to give him a gift or something to try and make up for that. But
what about a pineapple pizza?
Don't start that discussion.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I might as well kick both of you from the server at this point. But there we go. But yeah, just to give you a rundown of what's happened here, Tobias. Right now, we're currently looking at closest battle out there on circuit. That's technically not really a battle because they haven't gone side by side, despite me sort of prematurely saying it's a battle a little bit earlier on. 3.5 tenths of a second between Evolution Racing Team and AAA Esports for P5 in your GTE class. The biggest drama throughout the night, though, was Team Redline Daytona Prototype 1, Max Verstappen's team, having technical problems, and as a result, they're out of the event. So that's the biggest storyline so far, but could be a couple more developing here inside the final 3.5 hours.
One question I have, since I couldn't follow everything, I think 1.5 hours ago, somebody, I heard somewhere Williams and Red Bull in a combination that I don't like to hear.
Oh yeah, about that, yeah.
Yes, so the number 3 car, the Williams Esports Chill Blast car that was running very, very well throughout this race for the first sort of 2/3 of the race. They had a little bit of contact with Red Bull Racing Esports coming into the bus stop, and it was a bit of a silly incident. Lorenzo can probably tell you more about that, but contact with a couple of your podium sitters in GTEs mean that at least Williams Esports Chill Blast come off the worst of it, and they had to retire the car.
Yeah, what happened to... Oh, sorry, I was just gonna finish over here, Tobias. Just explain. What happened was they came into the bus stop side to side. The contact into the rear right of the Red Bull, of the Williams happened. They went side to side, and Red Bull kind of escaped unscathed. But the problem was for Williams that the Petra Rouge and the AAA car were just right behind. They got a little bit spooked, and the worst was Petra Rouge just nudging hard the right rear of the Williams Esports car and basically destroying the suspension, taking them away from the third spot and then race contention.
Look at the amount of traffic though AAA Esports having to let through coming into the bus stop chicane. Not exactly ideal. We did see too wide in the bus stop as well, which can be very sketchy. It's only a single line corner in any normal circumstances, so when they go too wide through there, it does result a lot of the time in an incident, but they're able to get through relatively cleanly as AAA Esports 0.4 of a second still behind Evolution Racing Team 26. And elsewhere on the circuit though, I'm actually spotting I believe it is the Simps Esports GT3 car that's currently about 2 seconds behind PRT GT3. But that's mostly because PRT GT3 came onto the pit lane about 2 laps ago here. But Simps Esports still have a good amount of laps on their stint to be able to work with, so it's certainly possible for them to make this gap seem a little bit less than it is. Tobias?
Yeah, there we enjoyed some silence from my side. I'm just looking through all the times and everything. And seeing what Fraser Williamson is actually doing on track right now, there is a slight chance for him to get closer, especially with the times that Denis Gabrowski is doing at the moment.
Yeah, so Simps Esports looking at maybe trying to challenge for P2. We'll have to see how the strategy works out, because PRT are currently 2 laps on their stint, Simps Esports currently 17 laps on their stint. So this might be short-lived in terms of these guys being this close out there on circuit, but if they can make it happen for the end of the race and give us a bit of a show, that would be ultimately beneficial here in this one. As just having a look at Daytona prototypes, what's happening there. I have to say, not all that much. All the gaps for the vast majority of the cars have really sort of spread out at this stage. You know, looking at Daytona prototypes, the closest battle you see there is Apex Racing Team versus Talk Freak Racing Sunset, and right now, actually, Talk Freak Racing Sunset having a good last 2 laps here, so they've been able to eat into that gap that Apex Racing Team were able to edge out over them after getting that pass done about 45 minutes to an hour ago. So potential P4 battling prototype still on for the end of the race. It just needs the right set of circumstances around it.
Yeah, it needs the right spots, all the right movement in all the right places, right? So not working for Chris Fuller one bit, because he got held back by one of the Daytona prototypes. I don't know who that car is. You guys can take a look at that and confirm who it is. I would say it is the CTC Racing Black, but it is not.
Super Sport Racing. It's the P3 car.
All right, it is the number. Alright, it is the Super Sport in Braden Eve, so it complicating his life a little bit. And he was actually dwindling the gap on lap by lap. It was from 0.4 now, 4 seconds, all the way back to 6 seconds. So how much track damage is, especially when you try to fight for a top, bigger spot within the top 5, so you can get a little bit complicated. Desperation might kick in when you try to make some moves.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Get stuck a little bit behind the GTE coming through the bus stop, but we'll be able to get disposed of them coming on to NASCAR turns 3 and 4 around the outside, 1 around the outside of the second. Easily done there for the DP. There we go, outside of the course sim racing Mercedes there, and they're able to get both bits of traffic done in the same on-throttle section. That's what you want to do in these Daytona prototypes. As Tobias, since you missed the discussion earlier, we had our breakfast segment here on Racesport TV, and I'll give you the opportunity to say what breakfast you had.
Yeah, my breakfast was actually a cup of black tea, or how's it said in English, I don't know. And with that there were some toast with some chocolate spread on there, because we don't mention some brand names. And in the end, just another bowl of cereals and being frustrated in front of the PC looking at the symbol of my wired connection.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I touch wood, I haven't had it happen when I'm directing, but now I've just jinxed it, and it'll cut out about 5 minutes before the end of the broadcast and cause everyone to panic.
Yeah,
I hope that doesn't. But Simsa Esports, they're making some really good progress. 0.4 of a second behind Pure Racing Team GT3. Now, of course, there is a little bit of a mismatch in terms of the strategies here and the pit stop cycles. Simsa Esports on fresh tires, at least they put them on the last time they stopped, but the thing is they are 19 laps through their stint right now. Meanwhile, Pure Racing Team GT3, they are on the older tires, and around the outside go Simsa Esports into P2 in GT3s. Nothing really that Audi could have done about that, especially due to the tire deficit. They'll look for a line back coming up through towards the International Horseshoe, but going to decide against the hopeful dive, because I don't think they would have been able to hold on to the position regardless due to the deficit that they have, Lorenzo.
Yeah, they wouldn't, because you just said it is tire different, and also not gap, but pace difference between Fraser and Williams. Fraser hasn't clocked in the last 5 laps, well, 4 laps, a 44 lap, whereas Grabowski actually been constantly on the 44s, but I think he did a mistake.
Might have. If you guys can get a look at that, that would be good. But look at that, the run the Audi gets out of the corner just before the NASCAR bankings. But the thing is, the straight line speed of the Audi trying to keep up with the AMG Mercedes here. He's sitting inside the slipstream, which will drag him around the circuit, but not going to be able to make their way by. And I don't think they would want to in this situation, Tobias. Just get a bit of fuel saving done behind the Mercedes and call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually a nice treat for the Audi, because now he finally has some slipstream to work with, and being the same class, he can also stay with it a little bit longer, and that can help them actually in the next 3.5 hours that we still have left.
Yep, starting to draw to a close. The end is in sight here in the 2020 iRacing Daytona 24-hour event. And sounds about the right time to go through your top 8 in each class as it stands. So, in the prototype fields, we'll get to see VRS Co-Anda Simsports leading that one, as they've done for a very long time. 1 lap ahead of Team Redline Daytona Prototype 2. We have Super Sport Racing in P3, Apex Racing Team in P4. Talk Freak Racing Sunset, they're in the top 5 position at the moment. DriveX Esports P6, Simicube Inex Racing Daytona Prototype in 7th place, with Team RSO rounding out the top 8. And Lorenzo, you have GTEs.
Yeah, let's go with the GTEs then, led by Team Redline in a very similar fashion to what Co-Anda is doing on the DPs, leading with a comfortable gap to the entire rest of the field. Well, comfortable, we say 15 seconds, but it's different strategies, with Red Bull being the only team within the lead lap in 2nd place. CMRC.de Titan is in 3rd, followed by the William G Esports Solari, number 1 class. Even though it says 88 on the team, it is the number 1 in 4th place. But they are on different strategy. And I was gonna mention 5th place, but I'll mention 5th place. But something happened with Apex on the bus stop. Evolution is in 5th. AAA is in 6th. MSI Esports GTE is in 7th, and rounding out the top 8 in the GTE class is William Esports Racer.
Tobias, give us an update on GT3.
Yeah, still on P1, there is RS competition with Lasse back at the wheel. yeah, followed, not closely, but 2 laps behind now by Simsa Esports GT3, which are a little bit off cycle with the pure racing team GT3 car, which is directly behind actually. Then we have 20 seconds further back on P4, Porsche Sim Racing 24 with Mike Palou. On P5, another lap down, there's S2V Esports. On P6 then we have Evolution Simsport Raptor. On the 7, Mivano Sim Racing Yellow. And on the 8, MB Esports Racing.
Well, there we go. That's the rundown of the top 8 in each of your 3 classes here today. And you can see currently a little bit of an interesting situation there for the PRT GT3 car, as they're in a lot of lap traffic right now, or at least a lot of other cars on circuit that they're having to deal with. So they'll be able to at least get a little bit of a rest for now, and hope that those Daytona prototypes can work their way through on the NASCAR bankings, and hope that they don't cause them an issue into the bus stop chicane. But having a little bit of a look elsewhere, you see AAA Esports and ERT. Again, I just kind of wonder what the result of this is going to be, because AAA and Evolution, they are so similar in terms of strategy and have been so close out there on circuit that I don't know at this point who's going to come away with the higher position, Lorenzo.
All right, let's get involved, not only with you guys, but let's get involved in the chat, not just in YouTube, but Twitch as well, and Facebook. It's not a prediction. Let's do a little bit of a gamble. Let's do a poll. If it continues like this, who would you pick to come out on top at the end of the race? I pick AAA.
Tobias?
If it stays the same thing, Connery, if the strategy stays the same, they still manage to be satisfied when the race ends, they have to fight for a position, who would you pick?
I was going to forward that question to Tobias first, so then I can take the cop-out answer. But go on, Tobias. Who's going to win in this battle?
I'm gonna second Lorenzo's view, to be honest. He sees. I think his prediction is not bad.
Okay, so by the law of broadcast punditry, I have to be the antithesis to both of you and say Evolution Racing Team just to make things interesting. There we go. That's the. But in reality, it's yeah. I think AAA Esports are going quite well right now. They still maintain the tire advantage. They haven't been able to do anything with it, but what they have been doing for the past 2-3 hours at this point is just fuel saving. So their fuel numbers are going to be looking stellar for the end of the race, and they can manage to take a lot less fuel in the final stop, for example, than ERT are able to, and they'll come out with a healthy gap, hopefully, for that AAA Esports car, and well, they're going to go down the inside of a GT3 machine into the bus stop. 0.3 of a second between these two cars. Goes up to around about 4.5 of a second on the exit of the bus stop, flashing the lights to try and get the next piece of lap traffic out of the way. But yeah, I have to, in reality, agree with both of you and say AAA Esports are in a little bit of a better position here today in this battle. But looking elsewhere, you do have a couple of other things going on, I believe. You have Apex Racing Team down on towards the pit lane right now, trying to get their pit stop service done. And we're coming to that point, Tobias, where a lot of teams are now going to put their final driver behind the wheel of the car for those final 3 hours, or 3 stints at least if you're in a GT3 or a GTE car. So this is a sort of an important decision for those teams to make, to see who closes out the race for their team, who gets to the checkered flag.
I would definitely say the fittest driver, the one who's the most awake. So
that's the shortest but yet most accurate answer I could probably think of to that question, because we haven't really talked about it, surprisingly, for a final part of a 24-hour broadcast. The fatigue issue here, Tobias, is a particularly big one. Of course, it's not going to be as bad as it is on the real world side of things, because everyone is inside the same time zone when a real life 24-hour event goes on. But a lot of these teams are international, so they have drivers from all over the place, and they can spread the effort a lot better than their real life counterparts. So, if it's prime time during the European hours, sort of, times like this where it's starting to get into the afternoon, into the European evening, that's when you put European drivers on, and of course. But of course, when it's the graveyard shift for the Europeans, that's when the North Americans and the South Americans really come into their own, because it's still the evening for them, so they're still feeling pretty fresh. At least that's one benefit of doing these sorts of races on the sim racing side of things, is that you can mitigate that fatigue issue just a little bit.
Yeah, also, I mean, what is the big plus is that this race, the in-sim time of this race is not too far off the real time in Central European time. So what you get is the benefit of your inside body clock, if you know what I mean. That actually you can look out of the window and the brightness is the same as in the sim.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. That does help maybe a little bit. Someone mentioning what happened to the Team Red Line GP1 car. They had technical problems with one of their drivers during the night, which meant that they had to take the tow back to pit lane, not once but twice. And after that, they decided that they're not going to continue any further. So they are out of the event. They are scored currently, let's see, about 57 laps behind your race leader, and they don't look to be coming off a pit lane anytime soon. So that's that Team Red Line car done, Lorenzo, which is a shame, because I would have loved to see a battle for the overall race lead at the end of things here, but unfortunately it wasn't to be, and we won't get Max Verstappen on this particular broadcast.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to get him again, and we know how hard Max would have gone to try to get a race win or even a top 3 spot away even from their teammates on the DP2 car. We saw, if you guys haven't seen, we saw how Verstappen was aggressive. He's an aggressive driver historically. He goes hard from the first lap to the last lap. He doesn't make those gaps. And he was going from the first to last lap strongly, trying to get it the field over the entire field, but unfortunately the only team that can be with that number 8 car. That number 8 car has been, outshining the entire field. But talking about GP field, the P field, I really want to give a props to Super Sport Racing. Staying quiet, not engaged in any major action, and getting rewarded with the top 3 spot.
Yeah, on board with them at the moment. Super Sport Racing, Gresham Wagner behind the wheel of that number 20 car right now, and it's really a team that we didn't really expect to be in this sort of position, Tobias. Those names certainly don't ring a bell as far as I'm concerned. I wonder if I can bring up the team drivers here. It's Gresham Wagner behind the wheel. We saw appearances from Andre Castro and Braden Evers there, and none of those names, at least to me, are immediately recognizable. I'm not sure about you, Tobias, but regardless of that fact, they're doing very, very well in Daytona prototypes.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the start of the broadcast, obviously, and it always feels like that they're there, but you're not seeing them because they're not engaged in some of these shenanigans we had on track, and revenge for GTE car and so on, etc., etc.
Yeah, so I think at this point, Lorenzo, they deserve a RaceSport TV fan immersion, right?
They do, with a star on it.
Well, there we go. RaceSport TV fan immersion for a couple of laps on board with Super Sport Racing. We'll be back with the commentary in just a couple of moments. Don't go away. That was a bit of a moment there, wasn't there? Into turn one that time around. A lot of the, well, a couple of the GT cars actually pushing very, very wide coming through there. I wonder if we can get a replay of this from Supersport Racing. We will be able to. We just got to cycle things back just a little bit further. And we can get the view from up above. So this was what happened in front of Supersport Racing with a GT car and another Daytona prototype pushing wide through the corner, and you'll get to see those cars very, very wide, and he's able to nip down the inside and get the lapping done on both of them. But that's not what you want to see in front of you this late on into the race, Tobias.
Yeah, these are these moments which you really, really, really don't want to see, especially in the position as Supersport Racing was, what we discussed before, just staying out of every shenanigans that are going on track.
Yeah, and of course, you have something about the pit stops as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is a famous series going on demand services, and especially also known that it was a game. But I just thought about it. If you take the sentence "toss a coin," you know what I mean, and you override it to a pit stop, then you could say "toss a tire to your driver, all crew of pits."
There we go. Meanwhile, we do have 1.3 second gap between Talk Freak Sunset and Simicube NX. A flash of the lights to the Audi to try and get out of the way. The Audi actually locks up their brake a little bit down into there. You often see that, considering that GT3s do, of course, have APS, so that shouldn't be happening, but it's happening regardless. Maybe it was just the tire sliding across the surface of the track rather than a lock-up there, but still, it does impede NX Racing just a little bit here, and you just see that gap just extending out again here, up to 2 seconds, where it was a lot closer than that before the traffic for Simicube NX Racing. Currently 15 laps on their stint. Talk Free Racing Sunset, they are 4 laps on their stint, so again, another big difference in terms of the pit stop strategies here for these two teams and the fuel numbers for the end of the race. But you can see NX quickly trying to work and close that gap back in, and they're eating into it once again, Lorenzo.
Yeah, they are eating in once again, despite the lap difference. And Bruner, we've mentioned this before. We saw NX had their fair share of action, trying to move the spots before getting in contact with some of the drivers, but still keeping it very, very honest to some of these teams try, in context.
AAA in the evolution. Oh, they're going side by side finally through the first sector. AAA Esports step through finally on that Evolution Racing team car. This has been like 2 or 3 hours in the making, but finally they are back past, in and amongst a huge amount of traffic as well. These Daytona prototypes trying to work their way through, getting very close through the kink there. Oh my word, there's a very fine margins involved here, as you see that Evolution Racing team has to do this extreme outside. Look at this train of Daytona prototypes looking to work their way through on this one, as you can see side by side between the GT car and the Daytona prototype coming through on towards the banking. But finally, AAA Esports, they've been able to do it. It's 0.8 of a second the gap right now. It might change coming into the bus stop here, Tobias, but wow, we've been waiting for that to happen forever.
Yeah, definitely. And with the 0.8 seconds, I think down the bus stop nothing will happen if traffic doesn't decide otherwise right now. But the thing is, especially with Daytona, you can drive on your own for hours, and then from one moment to another, you have like 10 cars around you. So it was one of those situations where you really don't want to have any traffic, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll have to actually cycle back and see exactly how this happens. They're ahead at that point. We'll just bring things back just a little further, but you can see now down into the into turn number 1. Oh, ERT, they pushed wide through the corner. That's allowed the space on the inside for AAA Esports to work their way through. So the traffic didn't actually really matter in that situation. AAA Esports got it done before the bulk of the Daytona prototypes headed their way through, and that was gifted on a silver platter to AAA there, Lorenzo.
Yeah, it was gifted, but it could have gone very wrong, because look at the prototype just coming in right behind him. And it isn't 1, it isn't 2, it isn't 3. It is 4 Daytona prototype just coming in the back end of that 211 car. And fortunately, he still came out unscathed. We saw a few incidents with Redline, and if I'm not mistaken, it is one of the Coanda teams that also got involved in there, and they still managed to get it out unscathed. And I'm just trying to take a quick look over here. Yeah, the gap actually it is equalizing about second and something between Kozubon and Phil Self. So that DP fuel just working wonders for that 211 car.
Yeah, and they're working on trying to break the draft already. Almost 1.4 seconds ahead right now. So that's just runs a little bit wide. Coming through that exit at the bus stop should be okay though. Although I have been wrong before. I'm just keeping a close eye on the back times. He is losing a good couple of tenths of a second here, so might have been cut a little bit too fine there for AAA Esports Black. But I think most of that gap being made up is due to the fact that ERT, they were able to get the draft of the GT3 machine coming out of the bus stop, and around the outside they go through the tri-oval, so able to bring that gap back to within around about 1.1, 1.2 seconds. But for ERT here, it's been not the greatest a couple of laps, Tobias, and now they're under threat of losing the slipstream and losing the potential fuel-saving opportunity that they now have. But I don't think they'll be able to lock onto the back here. AAA East was just too quick.
Yeah, I think Phil still is a little bit out of rhythm right now because of, I think that situation before overwhelmed him a little bit. I can imagine going into turn 1, looking at the mirror, seeing all those DPs, that distracted him for like a slight moment, which actually made him go wide. And now with the overtaking done by by AAA Esports, of course, that is a little bit, it's a little bit of a punch in the motivation.
Yeah, it is. You know, you've been in that battle for 3-4 hours at this point, and for to give the position up like that one's going to be a tough one to take there for Jared Philsell, who's currently behind the wheel of that ERT car. So, you know, just has to put that out of his mind at this point and just focus on the rest of this race. He's, for all intents and purposes, right now, he's lost the draft. Look at that, up to 1.4, 1.5 seconds. So, yeah, it's not the greatest there for Phil Sell, but still 3 hours of this race left to run, and still pretty much anything can happen. We see, at least if we got the right view, Simsa Esports down on towards the pit lane in their GT3 effort. This was the car that was battling with PRT GT3 just around about 20-25 minutes ago. Look at the traffic they're going to come out in though. That is not great. It's the same Daytona prototype train that yeah, cool. They were able to make their way through. That is actually full position there, so they slot in behind their fellow AMG Mercedes here, and look at all these Daytona prototypes trying to get through here. We'll get ourselves a view of it from up above, and well, we'll see. We'll move down the inside for the Team RSO car. Both GTs push wide. It comes Simsa back on course Sim Racing as they go through the infield. They're able to get the position back, and traffic giveth, traffic taketh away, Tobias.
Yeah, that is also definitely true. We've seen it, but what comes with it is that Core Sim Racing already 7 laps on their tires. It doesn't affect the car that much as 7 laps on the Nordschleife would, obviously. But I mean, it's still a little bit of a factor. You could see it into the second horseshoe that he was a little bit struggling for grip there.
Yeah, he was, and now Simsa Esports getting themselves back up into P3, which is great for them, considering they can't really afford to have a lengthy battle with Core Sim Racing, especially if they still think that they can do something about Pure Racing Team GT3 in a P2 fight for them. But we'll just have to see how that one works out for the end of this race. But right now, when it comes to a sort of final pit stop strategy sort of thing for Pure and Simsa, Pure have the advantage in being able to take the shorter stop if it comes to that. So certainly something to keep an eye on here. And Core also keeping themselves in contention as they're not too far off the stint of Simsa. Yes, there's about 7 laps between them, but if they're able to both take the same amount of stops remaining for the end of the race here, Lorenzo, they can still potentially be in with a shout of P3.
Yeah, they can still be within that the contention for P3. 7 lap is roughly 1 minute and 44 per lap. Let's do some quick maths over here. Not good, but lap test, that's about 12 minutes of stint that you have on your car. Roughly, I have to add the seconds, of course, but it gets quite complicated. You know, you really want to try to maximize your car's performance. You're still doing pit service within the hour for you. So for now, we're coming around the hour, around the 2 hours and 5 to go ish, to be very honest. And then Simza comes with less than 2 hours to go. They should be having around 2 pit stops, but 4 might be in a situation where they might do a what would say a splash and go, or have to go for some aggressive fuel saving.
Yeah, they might have to do so. We see Burton Kligerman Esports on the pit lane right now. Logan Clampett behind the wheel of that car, and we can see who's made an appearance so far. It's basically NASCAR drivers, 2 NASCAR drivers, and of course Parker Kligerman himself as getting himself behind the wheel of that car. So very much a decent effort so far from those NASCAR drivers here in this GTE class. Yes, they're towards the sort of the mid pack right now, I would say. Maybe the bottom end of the mid pack, but for them to put up this sort of performance in the top splits, that's something to not shy away from, guys.
Yeah, I mean, who said NASCAR drivers can't turn right? Huh? No, especially if you really think about that joke, Watkins Glen has a right turn. So no, but the effort is great. I mean, to compete in a top split on a road course, if you're like an NASCAR guy, which is like the pinnacle of oval racing here on the iRacing service, and then be competitive to a point where you can also go a whole 24-hour race, or let's not jinx it, but at least 21 hours of that race yet, and still be on position 11 out of like 18 that went for the starts initially. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is a very good effort. It's certainly something that none of us in the commentary booth could do. That's probably for certain.
I could race, but I wouldn't be in that position, and I wouldn't be in top split. So
I'd probably be in split 15 or something like that with my iRacing the way it is right now.
Loads of splits this year, yeah.
Yeah, we've had a huge participation. I think we've had over 1,000 teams.
1,000 teams, more than 1,000 teams. It is the highest participation of all races, like the special events that we have in the iRacing service. Will was mentioning this earlier, that we have like 1,100 teams or something like that. The only thing that rivals it is maybe Le Mans, because it's Le Mans.
Yeah.
I understand why they don't go for Bathurst.
I mean, yeah, it's a very tough circuit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's basically the opposite to Daytona, where it's in terms of road circuits, Daytona is pretty simple. Yes, it has its tricky spots, but the rest of it is pretty simple. But when you look at something like Bathurst with that mountain section, oh my word, that's the rate of attrition is not the best at those races, and it's obvious as to why it's biased.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the frustration. You blink once and bam, your car is gone. So I can understand why people tend to go rather for the Daytona 24 hours than for the Bathurst 12 hours. But do not forget, February 7th to 9th, 2020 is iRacing's special event, the Bathurst 12 hours we just talked about. Also having 2 splits, 2 races again, one for the Kiwis and one for the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, they get their own split, do the Aussies, as it's basically their endurance race. So it's going to be, it's good that iRacing have made that available to them, so they can race in a bit of a better time zone than they otherwise would have. Because I know it's a struggle a lot of the time, Lorenzo, for Australians, New Zealanders, maybe from some of the Asian countries as well, to really sort of take part in these sorts of events, because the time zones just don't work out.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a time zone difference when Randy and David, because David is from Australia, that is nearly more than half a day on Randy Cheneth, because David's on Brisbane and Randy is basically on the west coast of the United States, so the time difference is huge. and for Europe is basically 9 hours ahead. So it's quite of a workout, but still, you can see drivers, they are dedicated to try to go out with some of the European drivers that are top-notch here in iRacing. Still be on track like the Logitech's esports, like Thomas Tatla is still on the track. He's not Australian though. He's from a little country called Finland. So and noting that the Logitech's Altus is actually with their Race for Relief livery, right?
Yes, and this is a thing that we actually haven't brought up so far in this segment of the broadcast. Logitech GL2C Sports, let's get rid of that onboard and just have a little bit of a look at the livery, because they're running a bit of a special livery here today. Of course, Altus Sports, primarily Australia, and of course the driver behind the wheel right now isn't, but you know, we know how Australia has been affected by the wildfires in recent times, and they're running a memorial, a sort of paint scheme to try and promote a couple of charities involved in trying to sort that situation out and to try and support the firefighters that really do need it right now in Australia, because it's absolutely horrible what has happened there. So Altus Esports doing what they can here for the cause, so to speak. So basically there are two special paint schemes going on right now. You have Altus Esports with the Australian wildfire support livery, and of course you have the Martin Solari Williams Gym Esports car in memory of their driver that died very recently. So you know, it's really hard to talk about these things sometimes, Lorenzo, but they do have to happen. And for Altus Esports, trying to support their friends and their colleagues and their peers back home in Australia, having to deal with what is a horrible situation that they're doing, that they're in right now.
It's a very bad situation, and affecting not just the wildlife, but flora and fauna in general, and how the not the country, but how the world actually operates in terms of climate change. It kind of is an eye opener, and they're doing this race for relief to try to raise as much money as possible for charitable for charities that are working towards those wildfires in Australia. And one cool thing is that many of the teams adhere, you know, those not the calls, but you know, these. What would be the proper word? Because we cannot see as much on the undercards for race for relief, but we can see the Martin Solari on AAA, Steck on the AAA car, on the NX, if I'm mistaken. There are some other GTE cars that are using the same, you know, the stickers for Martin. So it's good to see the sim community coming around for unfortunate things like this and stand united for bigger causes.
Yeah, of course, and you can see that Williams Gym Esports Solari working their way around as well, having tragically lost one of their team members, Martin Solari, over the past week. So they're racing for him at the moment and looking to try and break into the top 5 at the moment, as they currently are in P6. They have a bit of a gap to Evolution Racing Team. You can see they've been gaining lap over lap over lap here, about 4-5 tenths of a second a lap here. They've been catching Evolution Racing Team, so still very much on for a top 5 finish here. Our Williams Gym Esports, which would be a very good thing to have happen here at the end of the Daytona 24, considering the very tough week that they've had to us.
Yeah, I mean, the viewers mostly see the race, and that is tough, but everything what goes behind the scenes inside of the community that doesn't always make the way outside, depending on how large your social media bubble is. But the way Williams Gym and especially the rest of the community handled the whole situation, I think that helped the team members, and of course maybe even his wife or Lutz to see there are people that just they are there for them when they need them, if it's just for psychological reasons.
Absolutely. Augustin Canapino behind the wheel of that number 1 car right now, around the outside of the Audi they go. That Pure Racing Team Audi should be able to get out of the way by the time the bus stop section arrives. So Williams Gym Esports able to continue on unimpeded in that situation. Just having a look at P6 and 7 in Daytona prototypes right now, because DriveX Esports, they're about 2.5 seconds behind Minutten Racing, and well, DriveX Esports did just come down in a couple of laps ago to get a pit stop service. Meanwhile, Inex are on 26 laps on the stint right now, so this battle in the grand scheme of things may not matter all that much, might not impact the result all that much. The strategy is going to be a much bigger thing than any on-track action right now. Oh my word, okay. DriveX Esports down the middle of 2 GT cars into the bus stop. Yeah, okay, that's what it is. A bit risky here for this point in the race. Usually you'd see that maybe inside the final hour, but DriveX Esports leaving no time left out there on circuit tires.
Yeah, I mean, it was a situation like Feeling Cute might overtake in the middle later, and he actually did. And you can see by the movement of the GT3 car that they both were expecting it.
That time's pretty consistent.
We're going to have another look at it. DriveX Esports, 2 GTs, no problem. Down the middle he goes. And, you know, it could have been so much worse. He could have done it so much nearer to the braking zone and caused a bit of a problem for those 2 GT cars. But they were well aware of it and well before the braking zone, so it didn't cause a problem. But, yeah, that piques my interest in how DriveX Esports are going right now, because it's 3.1 seconds for them to Minutten Racing. Meanwhile, has Top Freak Racing Sunset made a mistake here? Because the gap is now down to about 1 second between them and Inex here. So they must have lost a decent amount of time here over the past couple of moments. I'll try and get it on the replay here, but yeah, that's not a great situation there for Talk Freak. Just trying to see exactly what has happened to them. I wonder if this is far back enough to be able to spot it. Maybe you guys have what has happened to them? Was it just a mistake?
I didn't see anything, to be very honest. I don't know if Tobias did.
No, actually, I was also like reversing 1 or even 2 laps, and I couldn't see something major happen. I think he lost like a lot of time in a very short amount, but just because he was driving, I think, a little bit slower than the others looking at lap times. Yeah.
Yeah, and look at that. Oh, Inex Racing, they're down on towards the pit lane, so we won't have that battle. Maybe we've been denied a battle once again. Not the first time it's happened here in this broadcast, but Inex Racing down on towards the pit lane. Same with that car. That's VRS Crown Sim Sports, the number 18, getting their pit stop service done now. They will actually go for a driver change as well. So the Charles Jurges will make way for Sage Karam, the driver that's competed in a couple of Indy 500s now, but he wouldn't tell you about it. He's a very humble guy.
Yeah.
I've met him in real life at things like the Porsche Sim Racing Summit in Leipzig, and he didn't mention it once.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had quite a long chat with him at the event itself and in the hotel, and the moment then he added me on Facebook during that conversation, I was like, oh wait, I knew his name from somewhere. And you know, and Sage Karam is just a genuine guy. You could think he's like doing something totally else, and he's just a good sim racer and everything when you meet him, and he's just having fun with it. And then you remember he's the guy who denied Alonso the Indy 500.
Oh yeah. So I guess Alonso fans aren't the biggest fans of him, but Sage Karam takes over for that number 18 VRS Crown Sim Sports car, currently in P9, so very much in and amongst things here in the mid-pack of your Daytona prototype field. You have your other drivers that have appeared for VRS Crown Sim Sports number 18 as well. You have Renz Broekman, you had Ricardo Castroledo, we just had Passalis Jurges make way for Sage Karam, so those are the 4 drivers that made an appearance so far for that particular team. And right now, both of the sort of sister cars to your race leader right now, not having the best time of things, I have to argue here, Lorenzo, because you have VRS Crown Sim Sport number 18 in P9, you have the number 88 Coanda car in P12. Meanwhile, their number 8 car race lead. So I guess it's going well for one of the Coanda cars, Lorenzo.
Yeah, especially if we look at the perspective, they started 1, 2, 3 red. They started pretty much with the perfect start. Unfortunately for the number 18, they got involved into a contact with none other than Mr. Max Verstappen. So right at the beginning of the race, he got a little bit of scuffle with Mr. Charlie Burgess and affected their car performance a little bit. And they were thrown back bit by bit in terms of pace and also incidents itself. That's why they are in 9th place. They got a top 10, but you know, those 4 drivers, they're not going to be satisfied. They want to progress something better. They're having fun, but still deep down inside they want something better. And unfortunately for the 88, they just couldn't match their qualified performance, even though they still have highly capable drivers. And yours Jens, Keegan Leahy, Bobby Zelensky, Joni Takinen, unfortunately not being able to grab the same performance as the number 8 car in the
AAA Esports and Evolution Racing team on the pit lane at the exact same time, but finally we started to see a little bit of a difference on their strategy, because AAA Esports Black did not take tyres last time around. There was a bit of contact actually into turn 1 there. I just heard it. Not sure if any of you guys did, but there was a crunch sound into turn 1. Hopefully they're okay with the cars involved in that one, as you see now that Evolution Racing team, they're just coming off the pit lane. And if we can see the pit stop times here for ERT, it's a 1 minute and 1 second .2, so they took tyres on that stop. Meanwhile, AAA Esports 34 seconds on their stop. So it's basically now the opposite situation to what we had, because for the vast majority of this segment of the broadcast, it was AAA Esports on the fresher tyres, and this time they do the good old swapperoo to us.
Yeah, I mean, that happens, that works, and but you know, the race isn't over like for 2.5 more hours. You know, we're not even yet close to a standard sprint duration.
Yeah, we're still maybe an hour or so from that point where you can treat it more like a sprint race than an endurance race. So still a bit of time before we get to that point, with 2 hours and 38 minutes remaining in the 2020 iRacing Daytona 24-hour event. And it's been led by this car for the vast majority of it. VRS Quantum Sim Sports number 8, Martin Kromke behind the wheel at the moment. It seems like VRS Quantum Sim Sports have gotten back into form in terms of iRacing special events. They'll look to try to take back-to-back wins here in the Daytona 24-hour event. Of course, they won back in 2019, exactly 1 year ago. And to be able to do the double here, they will certainly take that and add to their collection of pretty amazing achievements, Lorenzo.
Yeah, Coenda's achievements have been, you know, nothing short of spectacular. And you guys look at one that you guys look at deep look. You guys see there's a DP car right ahead of him, right?
Yes, and I know what you're getting
at.
DP
car is the second. They're about to lap again the number 6 car.
Let's see it happen. VRS Quantum Sim Sports about to put 2 laps down on that second place car. You can see Team Redline, Daytona prototype, that car ahead, and VRS Quantum Sim Sport going to be stamping their authority. You see a bit of 3-wide action going on ahead, but this is basically Coanda in a nutshell. Sometimes when they get to the front of these fields, they'll make it happen. About to go 2 laps down here, our Team Redline Daytona prototype tool, they'll let them go and not fight for pride. Coanda Sim Sport 2 laps ahead, Lorenzo. Crazy stuff.
I gotta be very sure on my commentary. Coanda number 8, too strong. Please nerf.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you can do except for other teams stepping up at this point.
Let them start later than the others.
Let them start about about 3 minutes behind the rest of the pack, because that would have been the pass for the race lead there.
Yeah, at least 3 minutes. But yeah, I mean 3 minutes in that case would be pretty perfect. And now with 2 hours 35 left, we had a lead change, so that would be pretty great. But you know, you can't have everything, and I think Philipp Stamm has a very, very nice collection of drivers and, of course, engineers, if you want to say, because it's not only about the drivers, it's about the whole team as well. Even in sim racing, and of course about those who do their setups, which actually do a pretty good job. I mean, if they didn't know how to do setups, then they probably wouldn't have VRS.
Well, there we go. Yeah, it's part of their whole business model with VRS, I suppose. if they didn't know what they were doing, it's probably not value for money. So there we go. But VRS Car and Sim Sports, again, 2 laps ahead. Incredible stuff. So they're looking pretty secure to take this one at the end, but it's not over until the fat lady sings, Lorenzo. It's probably the understatement of the century when it comes to endurance racing.
Yeah, because we could grab spot 24 again. I'm gonna mention spot 24 because spot 24 I think is the best example of, you know, a dream story becoming a nightmare in the blink of an eye. You know, with Max Verstappen having those brake failures on his pedal, but again, luckily they were a lap ahead of the entire field, despite being spot 7 kilometers and still in the car unscathed, still undamaged. And now I think what Cronky can do, you can basically go out for a coffee break on the next door, take as much time as you want, come back and still be in the lead.
Yeah, that's the thing. It reminds me of the sort of the early Formula One races where the driver had enough time to have lunch during the pit stop.
I know a story like that.
Oh, I remember something else in that matter. I think it was on the Bathurst 1000 car. I don't know if it was Jamie Winthrop or someone else, but he had someone had a 5-minute stop and hold penalty. Went into the pits, stepped out of the car as soon as the car stopped, and just went out for porta potty. So yeah, that happens.
I mean, it's a lot better than doing it in your race suit, I suppose.
Nobody officially did it, apart from Ricardo, who said an excitement ripple, but nobody admitted it yet that he's done it, actually.
I want to hear from the drivers, the real race drivers.
Yeah, they were the real race drivers that said that, actually, because they had I don't know from where it was actually, but they interviewed the drivers and they questioned all, at least, of the Formula 1 drivers and asked them about the suit, which helps, but some said it was very, very close, but never happened.
Well, there we go. Of course, it is one of those things as well. Thankfully, I suppose no one's done that in sim racing, although I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, you have the same rules, especially in these events. You sit in the car and you can't move out of your seat. So I would totally understand, but mostly you can pre-plan better, and usually the bathroom is a lot closer than on a rear race track.
Yeah, I suppose. Maybe we should get off this topic rather quickly. But right now, I'm just having a look at the gap between DRS Blue Italy and Red Match Esports, because pretty close, 4.2 seconds between the two of them right now. Relatively similar for the strategy as well. Just a couple of laps difference. Both took tyres last time around, so this might be one to keep an eye on for the end of the race. Just inside the top 10, inside of your GT3 class. So that's what's going on there right now. But in terms of elsewhere, it seems like the gaps have all spread themselves out once again. So it seems like a roundabout time to go Racesport TV fan immersion on board with a car. And I kind of want to do it with a GT3 car. Any suggestions, Tobias?
Just take what you see.
Why not? Let's go for the race leader, because they've been silently at the front of the field, really minding their own business. It's RS competition. They currently have Lasse back behind the wheel of that AMG Mercedes GT3 car. We're going to go on board with them for a couple of laps. We'll be back with the commentary in just a couple of moments' time. Well, that was a couple of laps on board with your current GT3 race leader. RS competition, Lasse back behind the wheel of that AMG Mercedes, and they simply haven't looked back since very near the start of the race. They've been absolutely dominant so far in this GT3 field, seemingly untouchable at the moment, as they've done exactly what Coanda have done in terms of gaining 2 laps over their closest competitor, the Simsa Esports car. So they're looking very comfortable. And speaking of, there's a Coanda car down the inside of them as they head their way through the latter part of the infield section. I'm Connery Maddock. I'm joined by Lorenzo Bonda and Tobias Brockman for the final couple of hours here, as we do actually have someone waiting for an interview. I didn't mention this a while ago, that if any of the drivers inside the top split wanted to come in for an interview, they are free to do so. And we do actually have a representative from Team RSO here. Manuel Sudau is in the commentary booth, and Tobias, take it away with the interview.
Hi Manuel. It's a little bit weird to talk in English with you when I'm used to use the German language.
Yeah, we should keep it English, yeah.
Alright, so yeah, how's it going for your car, the number 117, especially for the last, let's say, 22 hours? Talk us through.
Well, in general it was quite unspectacular, but that is a very good fact. We're running super smooth, no damage, no nothing. I think if I have to mention something, then that we did 2 half spins. I think one was also in the coverage yesterday evening, so it cost us like 15 seconds, but that's it. And apart from that, we're super happy with the pace. I mean, top 8 and top split, it's a brilliant quality here, and it's just a huge pleasure and honor to be here and to do a race like this. It's really awesome.
I think no damage is a little bit of a lie. I can see some damage on the right, on the left front of your car.
Yeah,
now.
well, that's the standard damage we pick up in the bus stop. That's a standard like 1.7 seconds required, but that is not an issue because it's getting repaired while changing tires. Oh no, after changing tires, but while refueling.
Yeah, actually, you can tell now that Team RSO, as we get a little bit of a demonstration where exactly the damage on the car is on screen. But yeah, you finished higher than you finished better than Max Verstappen. How does that make you feel?
Tell it to my mom, because if I would have told her that like 10 years ago, it would have been a very funny story. No joking. But I mean, it's super sad for them. It just shows how hard the race is and how difficult it is to really have 24 trouble-free hours, or at least to survive them. And what I can say is that the whole team around Max Verstappen, they had a stunning pace, super impressive. And as I'm involved into this real life, virtual life things, I can really say that I really appreciate how fast he is and how good he adapts to sim racing. That's not for normal, and that just shows how much of a talent he has got.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome to hear, actually. So interesting. I wonder, what are your plans for this season of 2020 special events from the iRacing service? I mean, we have in February Bathurst 12 hours. Are you aiming for a top split entry again?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the special event calendar is pretty much the most focus of my team, or the biggest focus of my team. So, and well, just recently, by the end of last year, we had some additions. So we have 5 new drivers. 2 of them are with me today in the Corvette, Luca and Niels. And I have to highlight that only after a couple of weeks or months, they obviously really strengthen our team. They're a great addition, and at this point I really want to shout out to the 2 of them. They did a stunning job, so that's really awesome if you have teammates which are the same pace and whom you can rely on. That's really like also a very good feeling. And then the 2 weeks before the race, the whole preparation, the setuping of the car, all the training together with them was really maybe even the better experience for me than the race itself. So we're really celebrating this right now, and I really hope that we can just hold through the last 2 hours and 22 minutes.
Yeah, talking about thanking, again, thank you for having me at the expo and inviting me for the pizza that we had. And
no
also
worries.
the drive over there.
No worries, you're welcome. We should start discussing soon how we do it this year. But,
Yeah, the same procedure as last year, I'd say.
yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice.
All right, as we approach 2 hours, 22 minutes and 22 seconds, I asked Connery and Lorenzo, do you have anything to add?
I just want to wish Team RSO the best of luck in the sort of closing 2 hours and 20 minutes of this race. You do have a car that's ahead of you right now, although on a different strategy, because as you can see on the screen, Talk 3 Racing Sunset, not going to show the gap right now, unfortunately, but that was sitting around about a couple of seconds down the road. But I guess for you, Manuel, are there any... Are you looking to try and improve position here towards the end, or do you think the gaps are just a little bit too large to cars ahead?
Well, I mean, honestly, we're like our goal was to do a top 10 result, and we're in P8 now, so that's really what is already pleasing. So I mean, we ever take what we can pick up if there's anything to pick up, but yeah. That's Stock 3, huh? Yeah, I don't know what happened to them. But, I mean, anyway, that's out of our reach, so we just focus on finishing the race and do what we can.
Well, there we go, and thank you very much for joining us. As you know, you're the first driver, team boss, whatever, to come into the commentary booth for this entire segment. So thank you very much for that.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
you are. It's been a bit of a drought in terms of interviews here, but thank you very much for joining us. Is there anything you want to say before we move on?
Yes, I want to thank a couple of people, if I'm allowed to. So first of all, I want to thank Cedric and Marcus, who spotted us through the night. So we're only 3 drivers, and I had full 6 hours of sleep. So that is really cool. And of course, that's only possible if we have so cool team members who support us well. And yeah, thank you to them, and also thanks to the whole team who support us via WhatsApp and TeamSpeak and so on. So it's really cool to have so many people behind you and such a nice atmosphere. And shout out to our 2 sponsors, SimLab and Racing Fuel Academy. And last but not least, thanks you guys for this great coverage. Awesome job you do. It's really a pleasure, and you're putting us in the screens of the world, and that's what we really appreciate. Like, thanks from our whole team.
And thank you very much for taking part as well. That was Manuel Sudau as part of the Team RSO 177 Daytona prototype team, and going along pretty well inside that top 8 right now. They were looking for a top 10 finish. Looks like they're on track to do so, Lorenzo.
Yeah, they're on track, and that's a team that has been doing really good, you know, in terms of overall competitions. We've seen them in leagues like the SCO GT doing real good, you know, getting good results. If I'm not mistaken, they even got a win, top 5 at SCO GT in the VIR track, the Virginia International Raceway, if I recall correctly what I call the race. But it's a team that has highly technical drivers, Dow being one of them. And it is a promising lineup, you know, that is based out of Europe. It's kind of like a German, I was going to Swedish, but it's actually a Swiss lineup, but highly capable. And we expect them to see more leagues in Britain.
Yeah, they are doing very well indeed. Another team that's doing pretty well as well is the one on screen now, as that's the Red Bull Racing esports car, and at least right now they are currently on the same lap as the Team Redline GT car. So we're sort of this is the big difference here in the GTE cars, because both of the other classes, Daytona prototypes and GT3s, have race leads that are 2 laps wide right now. But meanwhile, in this class, it's almost going to be a lap as soon as Team Redline GT are able to lock onto the back of the Red Bull Racing esports car. But still, I guess it's still a decent amount closer, Tobias, than the other 2 classes.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and it's nice to see. By the way, I also have a story about Graham Carroll, because when he is competing on let's say offline events, he can be difficult to handle. yeah, you have to be very, very careful with how you talk and what you say to him. And he's very, very focused and elbows out, which is actually for a racing driver not the worst thing actually to be. But then he was at the live event in Munich, and that was like, he was so chill, he was so relaxed because he didn't have to compete for anything, and he was joking around about the final which they did just the night before, which was happened just the night before. And he was joking around what happened over there, and he was so like he was another person, let's say like this.
There we go. Of course, very much one of the more competitively minded drivers.
Yeah.
I guess
Definitely.
I'll say it in that way. He's really wanting to get the best out of himself and his team. And maybe when things don't go his way, it starts to get hot onto the collar a little bit. But right now, it's gone a bit rather well here for Red Bull Racing Esports. P2 at the moment. I wouldn't say that the race lead is on the cards. It might need a little bit of outside influence on the part of the race-leading Redline GT car at the moment. But still, a P2 will be a fantastic finish for that Red Bull side. Meanwhile, in Daytona prototypes, Simulcube NX Racing, Torque Freak Racing Sunset, 1 second between them right now. If we can have a look at the lap gaps, they are all green in favor of Torque Freak here, Lorenzo, and that simply wasn't the case around about an hour or so ago where they were losing time to pretty much anyone. Ronnie Nunez now behind the wheel of that car, and they're motoring along.
Yeah, Ronnie, which is a prototype specialist, drives really well the HPD, and also is a very competent driver in the LMP1. I'm seeing him drive LMP1 cars from time to time. He's actually doing really good on that car, but we have to credit also the rubber effect and the lap speed difference between both NX and Torque Freak. Again, they're on different strategies, so it benefits Torque Freak a little bit in terms of closing the gap and trying to be faster in the first laps of that yellow, orange, and blue Daytona prototype if we are to compare against the number 14 car of NX.
Yeah, it is. You can see lap gaps half a second or even slightly over half a second being taken out each and every lap here by Torque Freak Racing, and the closer it gets in the slipstream, the more that gap is going to be exacerbated. NX actually going to get held up a little bit here behind the GTE machine, and that's not going to help things. They're still in front by the time the final corner before the infield happens, and a slightly different line being taken off as well. We might see side by side here, 4 P6 coming onto the banking. They'll line astern for now. They have to go around the outside of the GT car. 6 laps on the stint versus 24 laps on the stint, versus 16 laps on the stint, excuse me, which is that NX car. And we can see if the Torque Freak Racing Sunset can work their way by. Not just yet into the bus stop, but they're going to bring that to around about 1.5 tenths of a second coming through there, and they catch the GT at just the right time here. Simulcube NX having to go high side once again. Torque Freak very much in tow, and are they going to make the move into turn 1, or are they going to stay behind for the fuel saving? There's the statement though, outside line for Torque Freak Racing Sunset. The battle for P6 going on across the start finish line, and they're still going to be side by side, door to door into the first corner. NX still on that inside line, a bit of a lock up there for Torque Freak Racing Sunset. They're still battling it out, coming through the first sector. Now we get so close, coming through the SS section, and now Torque Freak down the inside at the International Horseshoe. Big old move. Are they able to make it work? The elbows are out as they squeeze their way through on the exit of the corner. Torque Freak Racing Sunset up into P6.
This was hands down one of the nicest and coolest maneuvers and fights I've seen like for the last at least 1.5 hours.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been in the making, but we get a fantastic duel. Look at that, in towards turn number 1. So close to making contact through there. A close again coming through the S's section, and this commitment on the brakes here by Ronnie Nunez is brilliant. Does sort of shove the other car out a little bit on the exit of the corner, but it's just fair door rubbing in my opinion. There's nothing really untoward about that. That's just happens sometimes in racing, and Torque Freak Racing Sunset, you know, a little bit of contact, yes, but they've made their way through, and I still think in a fair fashion.
Yeah, just in a fair fashion. You know, that door-to-door always happens. You know, it's something that is quite natural for these cars to do. You even see that even Brunner didn't do that famous, you know, blinking out the car. And here comes Brunner once again, and going on the outside end. Torque Freak already defending the inside line.
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit of deja vu. This time it's Inex around the outside of Torque Freak Racing into turn number 1. Fantastic battling here for P6 in your Daytona prototypes with 2 hours and 12 minutes remaining. Torque Freak Racing are able to hold on. Coming through the first corner. Are we going to see a dive for Inex? No, they're just going to stay in line for now. But this one, yeah, Inex are really trying to fight this one tooth and nail, Tobias. There's no courteous letting the faster car through at this point. They're trying to get back past.
Yeah, that is still amazing. But you could see that Simukib Inex Racing is, let's say, a little bit more cautious than they probably could be, just not to throw it away for just an overtake.
Yep, there we go. Torque Freak Racing Sunset. I guess in this situation, you have to favor them with the speed that they've had. They caught up that gap to try and make that pass work, and now they have a decent one coming onto the NASCAR bankings. It's about half a second that they have in their advantage right now. They have a bit of the draft of the GT car ahead, flashing the lights. Just Ronnie Nunez letting that AMG Mercedes know he's there. He will get stacked up behind, and this might get give the chance away to Inex here as Nunez has to slow up for that GT3 machine. Are we going to see it 3 times in a row with the side-by-side on the start-finish line? We'll just have to wait and see. I certainly wouldn't put it past Inex to do it, as they are going to get the slipstream now coming out of NASCAR turn 4. Are they going to go for the move? Doesn't look like. They're just going to stay behind for now, and looks like they're going to go to the outside this time into turn 1. Are they deep enough on the brakes to make it work? They certainly go pretty deep, but not enough to bring it side by side, as Torque Freak Racing still have to have a defensive mind in this battle, Lorenzo.
Yeah, they still have to be a defensive mind. They cannot give any gaps for Brunner to work with, but Nunez just being more aggressive on line, try to carry as much speed as possible on turn 1 and then in the National Horseshoe at turn 3. And you can see how effective it is, because Brunner just doesn't look like he has the power to match that Torque Freak when it comes out of those low turns. You can even see the car wobbling a little bit, and it isn't the rubber per se. It might be the aero push effect that is actually given to those cars. You guys might not be thinking, oh, there's no aero push on the twisting sections. Well, there is people that are pushing this in those sections, and it's quite noticeable for these cars. And once again, Brunner with the 7/10 of a second to try to catch up on the bus stop against Mr. Nunez.
And this sounds about as good a time as any. Oh, look at that run, though, for Simukib Inex Racing. They gain a huge amount of ground coming through the first part of the chicane, and now as they head their way onto the banking once again, around the outside of a bit of traffic here, it has to be said, for at least Torque Freak, and it looks like Inex will be able to deal with that one as well. Still very much in contention here, but I guess lap by lap right now, Inex are just losing a slight bit of ground here and there, and they're not able to challenge this time in towards turn 1. A bit of a lock-up from Torque Freak, and that's going to be a little bit lost time. Push this wide on the exit of the corner as well. So now Simukib Inex Racing, they're seeing all these mistakes happen ahead of them, Tobias, and they're thinking, okay, even though they are the faster car ahead, we are causing them to push.
That is definitely true, and in the front there is Super Sport Racing coming up now, actually, which is on position 3 right now. So they're coming up on him. He's driving slow, he's having issues in front of there, so that can take part in this battle as well, probably at one point. I think for the benefit of Torque Freak Racing, though, because of the slipstream.
Yeah, absolutely. And just about, just going through the bus stop there, I said about as good a time as any. I didn't finish my sentence, but about as good a time as any to bring in another commentator. It's Mr. Dane Baird joining us here for his first ever, I believe, Racesport TV broadcast, and it's a pretty big one to start off, Dane.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's not many events bigger than the Daytona 24 hours here, but thanks for having me. Looking forward to the last 2 hours of this race. And yeah, I mean, it's really close here between these two cars here, and we've got VRS Quanta Sim Sport, they've pretty much dominated this race. I suspect that they might, as soon as the start of the race happened, after a few laps they already had a substantial gap. But yeah, as they come down towards the start-finish line now, are Simicube going to go down the outside maybe?
They've tried
They
it.
seem to hold back.
Yeah, they've tried it so many times. Another lock up there for Talk Freak Racing Sunset heading through turn 1. So they're struggling on the brakes into that corner. It is one of the most tricky corners in motorsport to get yourself slowed down for, so you can understand the difficulty. But in X Racing, they're just causing them, they're rattling their cage right now, and a couple of these mistakes are settling in, Lorenzo.
Yeah, it is some mistakes happening, but for Brunner, it nearly went out, because if you guys saw, if you guys ever look on replay, he nearly clapped that outside wall coming into turn 1, and that would be the outside wall heading into turn 1 on the NASCAR field if they ever were in the oval part. But fortunately for Brunner, having a little bit of room, he tried to go for a move, but Noonan's once again having the advantage in terms of rubber to come out of turn 1 unscathed.
Yeah, we're riding on board with Justin Brunner right now, as he's the car that's really pressuring the Daytona prototype ahead. You see a little bit of side-by-side down into the bus stop there between two GT cars, I believe, which is not going to be the situation that Talk Freak Racing wants, but they don't actually lose all that much time as a result. But NX Racing are able to get the slingshot here off of that GTE machine. And here we go. Justin Brunner is closing in, has to step out a line, and there's no draft out there on the outside. So as soon as he cuts back to the inside, he'll be back inside the slipstream. And, well, Talk Freak Racing, that could have gone so much worse there, Tobias.
Yeah, that was a very interesting situation. And also, if you think about it, now with the traffic and all the lockups that are going on there, now with there is the third place car that they're actually heading up to.
This is incredible stuff. So that's going to be a bit of an interesting situation. Talk Freak, oh, they're going to have to go around the outside of the, well, I was going to say traffic, but that car is actually laps ahead of these guys. So this is certainly a pretty weird situation that we have going on here. Look at how many GT cars are in and amongst this as well. So Talk Freak Racing Sunset, they have a challenge to try and hold on to position. A bit of a lockup once again. Coming through the right-hander around the outside of the Altus Esports car they go. Into the final corner of the infield section. They get that pass done over the lap traffic, but there's still a couple more to go here as they return back onto the NASCAR banking. And this all of a sudden has picked up. We had a bit of a lull in the race for the first part of this particular broadcast segment, but now things have come alive, dealing with the GT traffic once again. This time GT3 AMG Mercedes on the way into the bus stop. There's going to be another car ahead that they have to deal with, a bit of a stack up behind, causing different lines being taken by those cars that these guys have just worked through on, but now having to deal with one more AMG Mercedes. Talk Freak Racing looking for a third lane around the outside. Not going to quite happen just yet. They're going to try and get a bit of the side draft perhaps coming through the NASCAR bankings. They are side by side now coming through the tri-oval, and NX have lost a bit of speed here. Talk Freak Racing Sunset, they are going to be able to get themselves P5 still secure for them, and now NX, oh, another lockup. Dane, this is really, really interesting for Nunes, because he without fail over the past 5 or 6 laps, he's locked up a bit into turn 1.
Yeah, and you have to think it's only a matter of time before one of those lockups might be one of the rear tires, resulting in a spin. It's very easy to do in these cars. I know myself, as I was supposed to be driving this car in the Daytona 24 hours, but my team pulled out, unfortunately. But I don't think I made 5 laps clean without spinning it at turn 1. But this has allowed Talk Freak Racing to build a bit of a gap between themselves and Simicube NX Racing behind, because they've got that third place DP in between them now. Hopefully for them, they can keep that gap. Hopefully for us, they'll lose it.
Real quick.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. As Simicube and NX Racing, yeah, you're quite right there, Dane. They have lost a little bit of time here. Still within the slipstream, that's all you really need to do. Flashing on the lights once again for Talk Freak Racing, trying to get these GTE cars out of the way, and importantly, they put that BMW in between themselves and their competitors, but it's not going to impede NX Racing that much here. So They haven't really lost out here. They can continue on their way around the outside of that car, and they should be good to go in this situation. But look at that. It's still 0.6 of a second coming out of that final corner into the NASCAR banking once again. I think, Tobias, traffic is going to decide this battle.
Yeah, traffic is going to decide the battle, and it was already deciding it a little bit before, because into the bus stop, just before, you could see that Brunner tried to, or at least he did it, dive bomb so hard another GT3 car that he went very, very wide at the bus stop and lost that second that he has now as a gap.
They caused the GT car to take a very wide line coming through the international horseshoe, and an important thing to note here is looking behind. There's DriveX Esports, and he is gaining time on these guys, I believe. We'll just double check that. Yeah, you can see how much time he gained. 2.5 seconds 2 laps ago, about 1.5 of a second on the last lap. So DriveX Esports could potentially get themselves involved in this battle going on for P5, and well, it's been a pair for now, but it could become a three-piece in the not-too-distant future, Lorenzo.
Yeah, but we have to take note a few things. First and foremost, that Brunner is due on this pit lane really soon. If not on the next lap, maybe in 2 laps' time, as he is on his 24th stint lap. Oh, all right, here I am. Don't worry, I'm still here.
Team Red Line?
I'm still here. There we go. What's up?
Team Red Line, I'm not finding them on circuit.
Neither.
Which
what
the
GT? The DP2.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
They disappeared before the pit lane decision line.
Technical issues maybe again for Team Red Line, this time with their DP2 car. That is, wow, that is incredible to have that happen twice, both to the same team car, I suppose. Team Redline DP1, Team Redline DP2, both technical issues, and I think it's pretty much confirmed at this point because Patrick Wolf is nowhere to be seen. Team Redline DP2 will lose P2 in your Daytona prototype field here. Wow. Tobias, that's... Oh, go on, Lorenzo.
There it is.
People in the chat, please press F.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a time to press F, now would be the time, because Team Redline, they've had an absolute nightmare in the Daytona prototype field here today. Not one, but 2 sets of technical issues for both of their cars in that fastest class here today. That is absolutely horrible to see, and it's unfortunate, but it can and it does happen, unfortunately. It's kind of like mechanical issues on the real-world side of things, Dane. It's, you know, something that's completely out of your control, and I guess this is our best sort of simulation of those sorts of problems. Go on, Dane.
I mean, yeah, also, sorry, it's for Dane. Yeah, go on, Dane.
You might not be with us.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I'm back. So yeah, it's very common, to be honest. I mean, you see it all the time in races, not so much in these big events, but for them to happen to them twice. I mean, it's really incredible.
Sorry to interrupt, but NX and Talk Freak, they're going at it again into turn 1, and that basically typical lockup from Nunes into turn 1 happens once again here. We should basically name locking up into turn 1 doing a Nunes at this point, because he's doing it every single lap, and Justin Brunner just locked onto the back of him at this moment in time. And look at DriveX Esports not too far away from this one. It's not that third prototype you can see in the picture right now. They're a little bit further down the road than that, about 4.5 seconds, but they could still potentially be a factor here in this battle for P5 if the right set of circumstances go their way. If these guys have an extended side-by-side battle, DriveX Esports are certainly a player here, Tobias, to be able to try and get themselves inside the top 5.
Yeah, especially now with the issues that Redline is having again, that is very much certain, not a certain, but a possible thing to be said for all of them to get up. And imagine when Team Redline, the moment you get a disconnect on track, you will be towed back to the pit lane virtually, so you don't lose that much amount of time, I think. because they were very close to the pit when they disconnected, depending on where the server last placed them. If it's after the pit lane entry, then, rip.
Yeah, because, well, it's an interesting situation because I think that how the tow works in iRacing is that it tows you to the end of the lap that you're on, in all actuality. Because we had that situation during the Spa race, where Max Verstappen...
going for it.
Oh, yep, they are going down the outside this time around, and they've gone so deep again. They're really trying to wrestle this position away, but still yet no progress has been made. And due to the fact that Team Redline are on pit lane, this battle for P5 becomes a battle for P4, just one spot away from a podium place. And now things really, really do get interesting because Inex, I think right now, Lorenzo, they don't have the clear air pace, but because of the slipstream, they're being gifted all these opportunities and they're putting Nunes under pressure. So this is really an interesting dynamic between these two. Of course, with the pit stops, Inex will have to come in first by about 10 laps. But
they're back. Team Redline is back. I'm sorry. Team Redline is back. Patrick Wolf is back at the car. And now they are driving again. But this gives them an unfortunate position. They're on P7 with the whole thing which is unfolding in front of them. 37 seconds to DriveX Esports, then Simicube is directly in front of them, and then Top Freak Racing. So that could be a very interesting fight for P4 later on.
Yeah, it could be very, very interesting indeed. As we're having a look, Simicube, Inex Racing currently try as they might to get past Talk Freak at the moment. They've had a couple of attempts. None of them have been capitalized on. Maybe this time it'll change into turn 1. We do not know. 2 hours remaining. It won't, though. They dive down on towards the pit lane. They did have to blink first, and they have. They come down with about 27 laps on their stint. And this is going to be a very interesting thing in terms of the strategy here, because who has the best one out of Simicube, NX, Talk Freak, and DriveX? That's the question you have to ask here, Dean.
Yeah, of course, and they've got just under 2 hours left to go. It's going to be really interesting to see if anyone needs to make a pit stop with only a few laps left to go. It happened very, very recently with Petit Le Mans. We saw it happen there with a lot of teams. A lot of people had to pit, and it cost some people a lot of positions when drivers behind them were on a better strategy than them. So it's going to be interesting to see how DriveX can they make up some positions here with their pit stop strategy.
Yeah, because they were saying 4.2, you know, towards 4.5 seconds behind that battle, and they were certainly hoping that Talk Freak and Inex were going to go side by side a lot more, so they're able to close up that gap. But apart from that one brilliant moment into the first sector, they didn't really have too intense of a battle. But DriveX Esports right now, they're still in contention here. You see Simicube Inex Racing on the pit lane, and that's quite a while that they've been in. It's about 1 minute and 5 seconds on the stop here. So Justin Brunner still continuing behind the wheel of that Simicube Inex Racing car, but that is a decently long stop for the Daytona prototype, so he must have taken tires at least here, Tobias.
Yeah, definitely. I was just figuring out and doing some investigative journalism, or how you want to call it, to find out what was going on with two of the drivers, with two cars of the same team. Because there are rumors going out, of course, you know that, the feelings are high, the emotions are going all through the roof. I just quote something. What are the odds of two teams disconnecting?
Yeah, it's a Simicube Inex Racing, they're slow.
No. Did they forgot to pit? Did they forgot to put fuel in?
It sounds like it's out of fuel.
No way.
No
freaking way.
It can't be.
He spent so long on the stop as well. I would have.
You couldn't make this.
That is incredible. We'll wind it back just a little bit. You can see from the onboard. I'll turn up the sound just a little bit.
Left side. Clear left. The gap ahead is now.
What is happening to this race, dude?
Inex Racing, that's not a very happy sounding Daytona prototype engine.
Nope.
Oh my words!
Nope.
They've had to take the tow back to pit lane. That is incredible. So right now, that kind of messes up the battle for P4 that we're developing a little bit. This time, it's just now Talk Freak and DriveX Esports that are going to be involved in this. So it was potentially going to be a 3-horse race. Now it's still only a 2-horse race with a bit of a wider gap. But how has that happened, Dane? That is crazy.
Yeah, I know it seems like another F in chat. There seem to be so many of them in this race over this weekend. But another lockup there from Nunez. That one was the rear tires as well. He is really pushing his luck there. I would not be surprised if it does eventually result in a spin from that driver. But we've got a gap of only 3.4 seconds between these two cars. Can Manuel Garcia Elgabe close in that gap?
I'm just trying to think about how that could have happened, because it's not like he just forgot to check the fuel to buy Lorenzo. It's something maybe different, because he spent about just over a minute on the pit lane. Surely that's like a fueling time that's involved in that.
And the pit stop is around 37 seconds in the pit lane, and
it was a long stop.
Very honest. Like, Bruner's back, but I'm on it. I don't know what is happening, dude.
Well,
I want to quote Guillaume Fraga in the chat. It's broken. You know,
Yeah.
the hard ripping sound on the team radio that Lando Norris had in Formula 1. I can imagine it very, very much here as well.
Wow. Okay. Maybe someone, as part of the NX Racing team, can just drop us a message to try and explain what happened there, because that's one of the weirder ones I've ever seen. Having over a minute pit stop in a Daytona prototype and not having any fuel when you come off of pit lane. That's
Here he comes out. He's coming out.
That's an interesting one. Yes, I can actually grab that one for you. There's Justin Brunner. The fuel's in the car this time, that's for sure. But wow, now he's dropped all the way back into P8 here, and he's in a bit of no man's land, because you can see the gap behind, a lap, the gap ahead, a minute. So he's basically all on his own at this point, Tobias, which is good in a way, because you don't have to be concerned about any battles ahead or behind. But that is a huge amount of time and a good couple of positions lost by Simic NX Racing from something that we don't know about just yet.
Yeah, I mean, things are moving too quick at the moment. I'm looking into like 250 different types of information here. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So around the outside of the traffic signal, but go on.
Real quick, just on the service chat, we're here on the iRacing service. Jonathan Patel, which is one of the manager and sponsors for one of the teams, he's saying nobody wants that podium.
Well, it's not a podium fight just yet, because it looks like Apex Racing Team, they're in P3 at the moment, thanks to Redline dropping out, and the gap to Talk Freak looks like 23.6 seconds at the moment. So still a margin that can be made up in strategy and, of course, in lap time over the next hour and 50 minutes. So Apex Racing Team, they can't be feeling too complacent right now, because all of a sudden they could be having to try and defend a podium finish here from those two cars behind. But meanwhile, just as we've been talking about this, DriveX Esports, they've gained a chunk of time over the last couple of laps. I'll bring the lap gaps up for you now, and you can see, look at that, 3.5 tenths of a second, 7 tenths, 4.5 tenths of a second. They are closing in on that Talk Freak Racing Sunset car. Talk Freak are due on towards the pit lane soon here, Dane. So it's they might not catch them before they are having to pit, but still, DriveX Esports look to have a lot of pace behind the wheel.
Yeah, for sure. And if DriveX Esports do make another pit stop, which they probably will, then you have to imagine that if they can get some good, clean laps done, if they can stay out of too much traffic or use the traffic to their advantage, they can try and close that gap without being directly behind the car. And maybe once they've pitted, they might come out a bit closer or even in front of Talk Freak Racing Sunset there.
Yeah, they just might. You see them heading their way through the bus stop right now. And Well, we'll have to keep track of that coming through the pit stop cycle, that's for certain. There's Torque Freak. You know, I think they have a couple of laps still left in the tank here, so they're going to go for at least one more here, take it to 23 laps on their stint right now. So it's they're due in soon, just not on this lap. Gap 2.2 seconds ahead of DriveX Esports right now. So DriveX Esports are certainly closing in at a rate of knots as well. With how the situation is right now. Just having a look at the other classes, because we have this battle potentially on, and I'm getting a bit of deja vu here, Tobias, because this is the same battle that we've had for basically the entire 6-hour segment so far.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you have 3 hours having nothing. Nothing happens, talking about breakfast, having one interview, looking at you drivers and team members. You're still invited to come up to the Race Spot TeamSpeak for some interviews. And then, like, it's 15 minutes. It's a 15-minute time window where everything happens at the same time. And looking at the lap times at the moment, it looks like Patrick Wolf is still not yet in the groove compared to DriveX Esports, so that will take some more time. DriveX Esports, they are 0.4 seconds or even 0.9 of a second faster than the car in front. So that can get very, very interesting. Also, Evolution Racing Team in the GTE now trying to make a move.
You'll stay behind for the bus stop though, because you know you can make your way back by. If you get past inside the bus stop, you can get the maybe look to try and get the run off the complex, and then make the slipstream pass coming towards that start-finish line. So ERT not going to make the pass just yet, and this time around they'll go high side through 3 and 4. NASCAR turns 3 and 4, and they'll be able to make it work. Look at how much speed they carry off the corner. They're able to slot themselves ahead of that AAA Esports car, and ERT, that was basically a lot of work done through the infield section on the fresher tires, Lorenzo, that really gave them that advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to give you that massive advantage. You really want to try to power out, and now it's kind of like crunch time. You are with hours to go in track temperatures around 31 degrees Celsius. It isn't just like it was when we started the race. It is much hotter. So 31 degrees is something that you have to consider. Double staining, it's kind of like, believe it or not, it's kind of like out of the window, unless you really are confident on your own skills to keep the car on track and don't overheat the tires. So now the ball is kind of like on Evolution to keep that car on track and make sure he doesn't do any mistakes and overheat those tires.
We just had a word through from Gianni. Oh, that's your race leader at GTE. He's gone wide, coming through the right-hander. Wow, back to William Benecke. He's recently into the car. This is his first lap. This is his out lap behind the wheel of that BMW. So maybe taking a bit of time to try and get used to the car. A bit of an error there. Has a heart-in-mouth moment.
It was CTC Racing Red.
Sorry. Oh, it was contact.
There wasn't contact. I think he was avoiding a spinning DP there.
We'll get another look. This is Team Redline GT into the right. Is there a car ahead of them that they have to avoid? Yes, there is.
Oh, very well seen by Benecke.
Yeah, Benecke, heads up driving, takes it into the grass, but has everything under control. We'll get another look. Benecke, he's on his outlap and is already having to deal with this. You see that DP have a spin on the outside. I think the DP tagged the grass a little bit, going through the exit of the corner, and Benecke has to take avoiding action. Thankfully, Team Redline GT here, Dane, have a 2-lap advantage over second place, so it's not really going to matter in terms of the battle for the race lead. But still, you can't be having things like that happen ahead of you, because if Benecke picked the wrong direction, that's straight into the side of the DP.
Yeah, for sure. That's really, really important here, especially at Daytona. Slipstream and aero top speed is very important with all the banking. So a bit of damage to the front, it can really cost you a lot of time. With 2 hours left, that 2-lap gap could come down substantially if he had hit that DP. It's very good avoiding by Benecke there.
Well, it's not
just 5 corners.
Excuse me, sorry, it's not a 2-lap advantage, but it is a lot closer, a lot further away, excuse me, than the 21 seconds that you see right now, because Team Redline has just come down on towards the lane and Red Bull Racing Esports haven't yet. So it's more like a lap that they have as a buffer back to Red Bull Racing Esports, but still a bit of lost time. But as I said, then it could have been so much worse, and then we could be talking about a Team Redline and Red Bull battle for the race lead. But Tobias, you know, in that sort of situation, it's a really Beneke, he might have just like woken up or something and has to deal with that like immediately as he exits the pit lane. That's pretty crazy stuff. But you know, he's 10k I rating for a reason. The first driver, I believe, to hit 10k I rating on the road side of things. You know, a wealth of experience. Porsche Esports Super Cup competitor, and does very well in that series as well. So he's no stranger to sort of awkward circumstances happening ahead of him, and his
around him anyway.
no.
Yeah. Oh no, again. What is going on? Isn't he awake? Does he have problems with his hardware? I mean, something must be off right now. And look who's in front again.
Yeah, that's
car.
the same.
Can I
CTC.
chime in?
Go on.
I think he was avoiding the DP, to be very honest.
That might be that. Wait, let me check that again in the replay.
Let's check it again.
Yeah, because that might be. Oh yeah, that does look like it. To be honest.
Let's have a look.
That does look like an exclamatory white line.
Was it a dive from the DP? It's a big show of the nose, and
look how much space he leaves him. Like